up, yeah, yeah, yeah. Boot up, meant to be. Meant to be. Boot up, yeah, yeah, yeah. Boot up, yeah, yeah, yeah. Boot up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is our 2018 recap episode where we're going to be counting down our favorite top 10 films of 2018. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And Carson Patrick will not be on this episode. I know there's some people that have been writing in asking where Carson is. He's not going to be on the episode technically. However, he will be here in spirit form, a malevolent spirit.
He may actually have more spoken word than anyone else on this episode.
But he he sent us an audio file to put into this episode. We are doing our best to split up that audio file and treat it as though he's sitting right here in the room with us. And we're going to do our best to interact with his audio file as though he's in the room and respond in semi-real time. So this will be an experiment. I don't know when this episode's going to come out, but it should be cool. We're going to do as much as we can in real time. I got his audio split out separate. This is going to be a fun episode.
After editing like 12 episodes back to back, you just felt like you need another challenge.
I know. But yeah, so here we are. Top 10 films of the year. As always, Stephen, let's go around the table. Unfortunately, Carson does not have audio for this question. But how is it that you kind of go about creating your list? Because obviously, I always refer to this as the recap episode. It's technically our top 10s. I always do my best to say this is my favorite 10 films, not the films that I think necessarily are the best, but like my favorite, the list style list.
Right.
So how did you create your list?
I agonize every year, and this year it was probably even worse than usual. I think, like, we were discussing how many movies we saw this year. We're both north of 100 of things that came out. But I don't think the agony is because I saw too many things. I think it's because that number doesn't do justice, like, what percentage of the things I saw because I genuinely thought they would be really good. Like, this was not a year where we did a million episodes about like shitty random movies that came out one weekend.
We didn't not do some shitty random movies.
Sure,
we
did some of those. It wouldn't be the spoiler warning if we didn't. But
yeah.
This was a movie where we did multiple film festivals. We did lots of like pre-screenings. We really, really sought out a crap load of movies. And looking at the year in review, like I've mentioned to you, I made a short list of like 30 movies of things that like absolutely had to make a top 10. So right off the bat, top 10 can't possibly mean the best, end of story. Like, there's just no way of doing it. And I think anyone who sees enough good movies in a year knows that, like, you can't possibly name in order the best movies, end of story, right?
Yeah.
Best means so much to different people. It's how are you feeling? What are you in the mood for right now? Sometimes there's an element, I can't explain this to anyone else who asks me, of why, like, I'll stare at my list and feel like, even though I agree with all of those movies, I don't like that list, right?
Yeah.
I want the list to have like different aspects. I don't know, like I want it to celebrate a thing that I enjoyed this year, even if like that type of thing maybe wouldn't survive a top 10 flat ranking. So basically I wrote down everything that I knew I loved this year and I jotted down. So number like 1, 2, 3 were pretty much set in stone. The rest fluctuated up until literally like the moment we started recording. But I just wrote it out. I stared at it. I thought, what don't I like about this list? I tweaked things. I stared at it. And then I just continued until finally I like didn't hate it completely.
Like the old woman at the diner in Hell or High Water. You were like, Steven, what don't you want?
Exactly, yeah. And so I even made some parameters to make my life easier. For instance, I am refusing to put any documentaries on my list this year. And I'm refusing to put things that are practically documentaries. I'll get into that a little bit later.
So Bohemian Rhapsody is not making it on your list.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. What is your method, Christopher?
So I mean, I think when we get to this question or statement or kind of qualifier every year, I think that you and Carson have a harder time than I to narrow down the very top of your list. I feel like there are things I'd like in a year, and there are things that I really, really like. And I feel like I always get to the end of the year, and if I'm making a list of things that I genuinely like, then I'll arrive at 30-ish films that like we're like, oh yeah, I really liked all these. But if I'm like honest to myself and be like, which of these films would I have not possibly passed up to watch this year, it tends to be much smaller. And if it's the things that I want to shout to the heavens about, it's even smaller than that. And I think that I have a hard, like, it was you guys that pushed me to go from top 5 to top 10. Like the very first iteration of our end of year recap episode was a top 5.
God, I can't even imagine that now.
And I think
we'd be in bed so early tonight.
I know. But I think for me, it's a sort of thing that, like, it's really easy for me to go, like, these are my top 3 films. And then if I have to force in a 4 or a 5, then it's like, all right, well, what do I really want to show here? And then the rest of them are kind of just like, what am I going to chop off slowly from the list? So what I did, I made a big spreadsheet of everything that I saw, put a 1, I made a second column, put a 1 next to everything that I thought was good. Then once I had that, I made a new column, and everything that had a 1, I put a 1 or a 2 to separate into things that could be in a top 10 and things that could be in a thing.
You get some formulas in that bad boy?
No formula. Screw that out. All analog-ish, because it's still a digital spreadsheet. But then I make another column, and I start to do 1, 2, and 3 to kind of separate things that would be top 5, the rest, and then maybe not make it in. And then I have another column, which is the ordered list. I am a crazy person.
Yep.
I am well aware of that.
I feel like you just invented decimals in like the most complicated way possible.
But that is how I arrive at my list. And like normal form, there was like, I knew what was number 1. I knew what was going to be 2 and 3. Those were easy. And I knew what I wanted to be 10. Everything else was, where do I put everything in that list?
So the 10 is, again, a good example of how even for you, it isn't a complete stack rank. Because, like, sometimes, like, 9, 10, whatever, those are magical spots where you can be like, I want to talk about this fucking movie. I don't care about how perfect it was or not. Like, I need to talk about this one. Yeah,
and that's the thing, is that's exactly it. Like, I knew the second I left the theater, I was going to put this film at number 10, because I was like, this movie is freaking crazy as hell. This movie is awesome. And I just really wanted it to be there. And that's really where it came into the most difficult part of making this list, because it was like, I put something at number 10. Now everything has to go around that. And it makes it really, really weird, which is why these are not the 10 best films by a long shot.
There's no such thing.
Yeah. These are just the films that either surprised me or tickled me or did something for me that made me want to celebrate them the most. This is my top 10 most celebrated films of 2018.
I think mine, so we've, over the years of this podcast, I think, if nothing else, we've distilled what is it about us that we try to express through movies, right? Like, what is it that we value the most? What is the thing that is going to be the most Chris-like movie of the year, right? And I think for me, it kind of changes, right? In the early days, it was kind of all pure like indie emotion, and then it kind of shifted. I've been through like depressing drama eras, the famous Dallas Buyers Club age of the spoiler warning, and in recent years it's been kind of turning into it's always like, what is the emotional message or the emotional statement? That isn't the same as a message movie, but it is like, I like movies that I can remember now because I remember what it made me think about and what it made me feel. And I think, like, when making these lists especially, I have a tendency to think, like, what are the salient feelings of the year that I want to, like, try to summarize with the list? So in whittling down to 10, that's kind of what I did. I'm sure I'm going to write, like, a top 10 pairs or 15 pairs or something later that's going to look nothing like this. I'm fucking inconsistent. I'm sorry. That's just how these lists work.
I mean, that is how they work. So rather than talk about these lists, why don't we talk about these lists?
All right.
All right, we're going to start off. We're going to dive into our number 10.
Wait, can we make a prediction first?
Yes.
How much overlap do you think the two of us will have this year?
I honestly, I've been thinking that as I was comprising my list, and it's not that I think my list is magical or separate than anything else that you might put, but I feel that, like, there are some years where there's huge overlap.
Yeah.
There are some years where there's just a few key overlaps. I think at most we're gonna have. Oh, this is such a now that I have to say it out loud. This is difficult. I'm gonna say at most 3 film overlap.
Yeah, I'm giving us 3. I think 3 is the right number. We'll see if that happens.
All right.
0 with Carson.
That is true. That is true. We are recording in real time our reactions to Carson's audio, but we have listened, in some cases, multiple times to his audio track. So Here we go.
But we do not know each other's list at all. So
So as usual, we always keep our lists separate because Carson was recording remotely, and we wanted to try this experiment to kind of edit his audio into the episode as if he was with us. We had to obviously listen to his audio and prep it to work it in through the episode in real time so we can record it.
I was just thinking last year's episode when Carson announced that he was not going to be a regular on the podcast anymore, and it was to make room for other co-hosts. And all we're doing now is cobbling a Frankenstein of static recordings of Carson.
It would actually be funny if this was like just calls that we had with him through the year that weren't episodes, that were his reviews of films.
It's just our like shrine to Carson.
I mean, we did make a bubblegum sculpture of him in the corner of the room. And by bubblegum, I mean feces.
I told you need more fiber in your diet, Chris.
All right. If we haven't lost everybody, we promise these reviews are going to go well. Here we go. Stephen Miller, start us off. What is your number 10 film of 2018?
I'm laughing because this is like the least appropriate film to follow with bubblegum feces. I need to shake things up. Can we do like a Carson palate cleanser? Like Carson starts us off.
You want to start off with Carson?
Yeah.
We can do that. All right, Carson Patrick. What is your number 10 film of? Also, Carson did not provide a top 10 list. He provided a top 20. Well, he recorded like 16. No, he recorded like 13, and then an honorable mention. To fit it into the audio, we had to drop a few things. So these are not technically completely in order. We just took things that we might be able to respond to and put them in. And yeah. So this is what he will henceforth be known as the canonical top 10 list from Carson Patrick. The top 2 are 100% him. He says it in the audio that this is his 1 and 2. But this counts as number 10. Here we go.
The Nutcracker and the Four Realms, another very underrated movie this year, I felt like, which is also on here, obviously. I mean, talk about... This is, like, definitely the crimson peak of this year, right? There's, like, very little story. It's all about the visuals. It's like a decadence porn. Like, it's just... a decadence overload, you know? Like, it's just the visuals and the costumes and the production design are all just, like, very... Like Aquaman, like you can't, like there's so much to look at in each scene, you know, like they're the very like traditional, like all of the sets were built and made. I mean, there's a lot of CGI in it too, but just the craftsmanship of how they built everything. It felt very throwback, especially for Disney. It felt a throwback in that sense because it was a very like rich looking movie. They shot it on 70 millimeter, so it looks even more just decadent, you know? And Keira Knightley plays the Sugar Plum Fairy in this. And it's one of those performances where you're just kind of like, I fucking love this. Like, it's like completely just steals the whole movie. In a way that, you know, I feel like we know that Keira Knightley is a great actor, but I don't know. It was kind of like one of the like a Colin Farrell in an In Bruges moment. Where you're like, oh yeah, like Keira Knightley's the shit. Like it was one of those type of like haven't really seen that style performance from her before, and it was really just fun to watch. Yeah. So I think, you know, we've got some, I probably should wrap this up because I'm sure Chris is tapping his watch. But anyway, that's okay. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about. We can cut this out.
But they didn't cut it out.
So that's Carson's canonical number 10 for the list. That's The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. I believe neither of us saw this film.
Nope.
Came out at the beginning of November, which I think was the start of our craziness where we were reviewing a ton of films, which you wouldn't technically know if you subscribed to the feed. Because
our very last recording was almost 2 full months ago from now.
Yeah, which might be why we might be a little rusty. Or we might be just exciting and refreshed. I don't know how this review is going. That's up to you guys to tell us. But yeah, so I mean, we don't have a lot to comment. I don't think even on a given time where there was a good enough schedule that we would have been excited to see this film. I think we have in the past done reviews of some of the Alice's in Wonderlands and the other
Pan
Alice in
fit into
Wonderland. Which one was that?
Pan.
Oh yeah. So we tend to see these films, these live action kind of crazy heavy CG films. I don't think we're ever excited for them, but we have talked about it in the past, and I'm sure they probably all went a little like this, where we didn't care, and Carson was excited for the visuals and the spectacle and the crazy performances.
The decadence.
The decadence, yes. But yeah, so refreshed now, Steven. You ready to jump into your number 10?
Refreshed. So mine. So I mentioned that I'm keeping documentaries off my list and movies that are like so blurry between fiction and nonfiction that they might as well have been documentary. And I'm gonna like break that rule immediately. I think the real dividing line wasn't about like truth or fiction, but about whether it had to be a fiction movie to tell the story it wanted to tell. So like Minding the Gap is a documentary that probably would have made like my number 2 if I were doing that, but documentaries are not included on this list. Films like The Rider, they weren't documentaries, but they easily could have been. They were like meandering slice of life. The line between like the actor and the real world is so blurry. Like whatever. Those are both great movies. They're not going to be on my list. The film that I'm talking about had to be exactly the way it was to tell the story it wanted to tell, and that's a movie called The Tale that was on HBO. And it's a film by Jennifer Fox, who's a documentarian. And the reason I needed a palate cleanser is this is a heavy, heavy movie. Have you seen this movie?
I have not seen it, but I have listened at length to conversations about it's like how good it is and how uncomfortable it is. And it's one that I want to watch. I just don't know when I'm going to be in the mood to watch it.
Well, that's the thing. It's very difficult. So Laura Dern plays the adult Jennifer Fox, who... She just discovered an essay she'd written when she was in probably 8th grade. She was 13 years old. And the essay was about her, quote, boyfriend, her relationship with a 40-year-old man. And up until this point in her life, she's kind of like, yeah, that was a thing that I did. You know, I was a rebellious kid. My mom wouldn't have understood. And at this moment, she suddenly realizes, like, Jesus Christ, this is like a very fucked up part of my past that I need to reckon with.
Yeah.
And the result is like exactly as intense and uncomfortable as you think it would be, but not in the way you think it is. So you would think a movie about childhood abuse would be like incredibly dark and dour and just like very devastating over and over and over again. And instead this kind of has that like fluid, eerie, dreamlike quality of like the Virgin Suicides, for instance. Or there's some documentaries too that play with fact and fiction, like The Stories We Tell, that kind of get into this too, where this is really about playing with the form of autobiography, where she's looping over her past and thinking about these moments that at the time she kind of blocked out, and kind of revising along the way. So the logic of the film is very dreamy and eerie. Elizabeth Debicki is definitely a standout here as this woman who kind of allowed these things to happen, and she stands in her past as this almost like fairy tale like perfect chilly person. She's basically seeing her the way that a 13-year-old would have seen her, as this woman that she's idolizing who is just mysterious and can do no wrong. The famous scene in this movie that pretty much anyone who talks about it discusses with the revision is, for the beginning of the film, the character who plays her is probably like 16 or 17, and she's supposed to represent the age that she thought she was at the moment this happened, when she was a rebellious girl who was dating an older man. And then partway through the film, she sees a picture of what 13-year-old her looked like, and she realizes just how young 13 is. That will come up later in my film reviews. And from then on, the film just completely changes, where it's a different actress playing this character. And there are things like that it's just such a interesting exploration of like grief and pain. And it's never just dour. It's never woe is me. It's very much about like, how do I reckon with these things in my past and how do I cope with them now? And it's just a really, really interesting movie. I never want to see it again, ever. Yeah. Like one time is enough, but I think everyone should see it at least one time. It's a really like powerful use of how fiction can tell a non-fictional story in a really interesting way.
Yeah, like one I hadn't really heard much of it. I knew the title and knew that people were kind of singing praises of it. And then I listened to some people talking about what it actually was, and I was like, oh, I need to see this, but I I just don't know when.
I should mention Common plays a romantic interest here, like the adult husband of the Jennifer Fox's character, and I still maintain Common is distracting in literally everything he's in. There have been at least 3 movies this year where Common was the most distracting part, but this movie is so goddamn good I didn't even care. I believe Common in it.
All right, so my number 10 is a little less serious subject matter, but it is a film that I saw honestly on a whim. Just completely was like out of nowhere. I had not seen a trailer, had not seen anything. I just saw the title of this film, had no clue what the title meant, and then saw the poster and was like, I'm probably not going to see this film, but decided, fuck it. Alamo's doing a screening. There's a director present. There's cast members present. I'm going to go see what this film is. This is the film Bodied.
Oh, wow.
Which is about, basically, there's a young man who is the son of, first of all, filmed by Joseph Kahn. It is about a young man who's the son of like a English professor or something, somebody who's like well-written person, and he is trying to figure out what he wants to do his thesis on in college, and he decides that he is going to do his thesis on like underground rap battles. And essentially, like, from the moment this film starts, it is fucking amazing, oozing with style. It is just, it is such a fun ride, and it's really incredible the way it handles like following the subject matter in a way where it's like this kid is so obsessed with this underground rap battle scene that like he treats the individual rappers sort of like their Pokemon, where he knows their stats and like what type of rhyming they like to do and the type of insults they throw during these battles. And the film, every ounce of this film is like there's like After Effects overlays type of things where it's like characters are doing things and you're seeing like as they like do guns with their fingers, you see like actual like bullets flying out of their fingers, and it's super crazy. It's ridiculous. The rapping is great, and it's just it's a scene that I knew nothing about, so I didn't see this because like, oh, I used to be really into underground rap battles, but it was just a thing where it's like this seemed weird and strange. Went to go see it. Incredibly fun. Joseph Kahn had a great quote while he was talking about this film, because the film is slightly, it references 8 Mile in a number of times, because the lead is a little white kid, and in the film, or Joseph Kahn, when talking about the film, he said 8 Mile was a film that asked the question, can a white boy rap? And this is the film that asked the question, should a white boy rap? And I just thought that was a fantastic quote. The film is incredibly fun, incredibly energetic, really heartfelt too, in a way that like as characters have to go up against each other and talk, like you care for like what is happening with this lead and his relationship with the other people that are kind of taking him under their wing. And it's not just the normal story where the one outsider comes in and he's perfect at the thing. It is a messy story about a kid who just wants to excel at this one thing that is really interesting to him. And I had such a fun time with it. The Q&A was great. It was just an amazing time. Did not expect it. Just walked into the theater to see this film and walked out going like, oh shit, that was crazy. People need to see this film. And like, I feel like nobody was talking about it. Yeah. And that's why I knew, I was like, this is going on my list. It was one of the most fun experiences I had all year in the theater. And I think that more people should see this film. And it's fun. And I told you a few times, I tried to be slightly, I was like, you should see Bodied if you have a chance. It's pretty
I know,
cool.
and I had that in my mind, and it never like tipped. I was probably like traveling or something during that time. I don't remember exactly, but this is the good thing about a list, because I will definitely see it now. It was already like on my radar as a film I had missed that I got to catch up on, but I wouldn't have guessed it would make your list, and now I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably available for streaming now. So, all right. So now we're going to move on to our number 9s. Do you want to jump to Carson again, or do you want to flip the order?
Ooh, I don't know. I think we can flip the order.
Okay.
So from now on, we'll be doing our numbers, and then Carson will end with his number.
Yeah.
So my number 9, again, I'm continuing 2 trends here. One is breaking my own rules. In this case, this is a film we've talked about already when discussing our lists, that I don't think by technical standards it came out in 2018. I think technically it came out midnight January 1st was when it actually went wide. But we both saw it at Tribeca in April. So by my standards, at least, that's going to count. It's also continuing the theme of grief, which is going to be, I found, a very common theme throughout this this list. I've been thinking about grief a lot for a number of reasons, political or otherwise. And this is a movie that, as far as I can tell, 100% of critics either slept on or actively didn't like. It came and went with like such a blip. I'm super curious if I were to watch it again, not on the festival high, if I weren't riding that wave of Tribeca. We were watching like 2 movies a day for 2 weeks.
If cast members weren't literally sitting just a few rows away from you.
Exactly. Like, would this still work on me the way it was? Like, I'm starting to question my sanity. Like, maybe the high just did it. But fucking, I don't care. I love this movie. I don't even want to watch it again because I want to keep that feeling of loving it that I had the first time. So here are the important bits about this movie. It's a brooding, impressionistic neo-noir film with an electronica soundtrack set in Brussels, mostly at night, starring Catherine Waterston, Michael Shannon in a romantic role, Dario from Game of Thrones, and a Eurotrash Luke Evans. How the hell is this not everyone's favorite movie of the year?
Wait, isn't Eurotrash Luke Evans redundant?
Burn. I'm talking, of course, about State Like Sleep, Meredith Denlick's movie. And this is a movie that there have been multiple films this year that kind of tried to do that neo-noir thing. Gemini is one of them that tried to just build dread, build an atmosphere, and let you kind of float in it for a while. And I feel like this movie just knocked them all out of the water. It's a film about grief. It's a film about kind of going from numbness to feeling something again. Catherine Waterston plays a woman who lost her husband about a year ago, and she's finally returned to the scene of the crime, or the area where he used to live, so she can gather his things and put a closure on it. And the film just becomes, on the one hand, it becomes a mystery where she's trying to, quote, solve what happened, but it's also an emotional journey where she's starting to open herself up again and look at life and kind of coax out these feelings that she had let freeze up until that point. Catherine Waterston is just so goddamn good in this movie. I mean, she's always great, but she's usually playing a kind of like enigmatic character, a character who's like off to the periphery, who you can't read, you don't know how she's feeling. And here she's very much like raw, on display. The camera is on her face like 90% of this movie. When it isn't, it's on Michael Shannon.
And sometimes the camera is literally on her face as she is a photographer.
Yeah, exactly. And when it isn't on her face, it's on Michael Shannon's, who is also playing so against type here as like a romantic lead is the wrong word, but he is not a disturbing character. He's not the enemy of this movie. He is a human being who's opening himself up to her.
He's definitely in a complicated situation.
Sure. Yeah, he's in a complicated situation. But this movie, it just takes its time. It enjoys the ambiance of it. It has certain bits of dialogue that have just stuck with me so well. I thought this was movie magic. I thought it struck exactly the tone the director wanted it to strike, and I'm honestly bewildered why no one has seen this or is talking about this movie, because just from the cast to the execution, I just think it's like a beautiful, beautiful film, and I would say I can't wait to revisit it, but again, I had such a great time the first time sitting behind Sam Waterston, near Catherine Waterston. Michael Shannon was like in pajamas or something.
He was in like a raincoat that was... It looked so much like just a bathrobe that it was amazing.
But yeah, I just think this is a great movie about the slow process of like denumbing yourself, of like going from grieving to feeling pain to feeling joy, and kind of the arc that it takes. It's just right up my alley. I think it's great, and it's available on streaming now, so everyone can go see it.
Yeah. State Like Sleep is an amazing film. I think I loved it just as much as you. At the festival, I think I loved some other things more than you, which is the only reason why, like, when we got to our stack ranking of that thing, I pushed a few things higher than it. But it is a really, really interesting film. Like you, I have not yet revisited it, but we did have tons of conversations where we were like, it wasn't even that we were like, why is nobody talking about the film? It was like, why has there not been a trailer?
Yeah, why is it not being released?
A release date? Yeah, what is happening? Why is everybody sleeping on this film in a state like that? But it was just one of those things where it was like, where is it happening? And then they finally released the trailer, and I'm like, why are you not even trying to put it in this year? And why are you dropping it at the beginning of January, which is like historically the worst time to drop any film? But yeah, so it very much saddened me. So great film. Agree.
Yep.
My number 10 film is not Steak Light Sleep. or my number 9 film, sorry, is not State Like Sleep, but it has some overlapping themes. It involves a person who is trying to investigate something. They're trying to put together some pieces about what happened to somebody that they love. And
are we talking about the aforementioned?
We are talking about a film that is not neo-noir, but it does have an overlap in an actor within the film.
Oh my.
And after I say the name of the film, I will pause for about 3 seconds while Carson screams and throws something out a window of his apartment. But my number 9 film is Searching.
Nice.
This is a film that, I mean, when when the trailer came out, Carson even said, Chris's number 1 film of the year or something like that, because this is
only number 9. Burn, Carson.
But this is exactly the type of film that would jump out for me. I was totally on board with the shtick. We had that line in our review where I talked about I just like vector images moving around the screen. But I really think that this is a film that is not just about the gimmick. It is a very, very compelling story. The father character goes about the investigation of what has happened to his daughter in a very reasonable manner. He makes moves that are even smart. I wouldn't even thought of doing that. And it's just watching him progress into not madness, but just desperation as he tries to find out what has happened to his daughter, as he spins things in his head about what might have happened and who might have been involved. I just thought that this was an amazing film. On my trip to Japan, I watched this probably 5 times on other people's screens as I listened to the podcast.
Oh yeah, when I was traveling too, everybody was watching this movie.
Everybody was watching the film, and that's the thing is it's a very visual film, and I know the story, and I can literally watch it with no sound and be like, fuck yeah, this movie's
That's
great.
going to come up later, BT dubs.
Nice. But yes, it was just, I thought it was an incredible film, and I know that some people dismissed it. I know that some people on this podcast didn't like it as much as I did. I think we even joked about it being on my top 10 list, and I was like, it's probably not going to make it on my top 10 list. But when I sat down to look at the things that came out, this was the thing that got me the most excited about it. And I've listened to some conversations with, both the director and the actors, and talking about what the amount of work that went into making this film and making it right, and not just being we're going to do some cool screen stuff. It'll be pretty fun, guys. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great film. And because of that, it makes my number 9.
Nice. So you and I reviewed this on the podcast. I liked Searching. I think you and I and Carson all maybe agreed that this is probably the peak that genre can be.
Yeah.
Given the conceit of it existing entirely on a computer screen, I think it's amazing what this movie managed to pull off. My only feeling was, is that constraint worth it? I'm impressed that they managed to tell that story. I'm amazed that they managed to squeeze that much emotion out of that tight a constraint that they put themselves in. To me, it was only a quite good movie. It didn't leap over into amazing, because I felt like if it had just broken free and let John Cho be a dramatic actor instead of had to be in front of that webcam, I feel like it would have been even better. But yeah, I think it does well. I think if you take away the narrative conceit, though, the story itself, I wouldn't want to watch the normal version of that story, right? The twists and turns would not work the same way.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think that the realistic aspect of the way the information is being portrayed, and also the performance of John Cho, he's so great in this role as this grieving father that you 100% buy that. Plus the emotional impact of that first 3 minutes of the movie or whatever it is.
It's great. It's Up, right?
Yeah,
it's just an amazing opening scene.
And it's done so well. And it's that intro to the film sets this amazing tone and bar that makes you just go this is not just somebody fucking around making a film. This is somebody who actually had an idea, who could have pulled the plug at any point, but was no, we need to nail this beginning, and then we can make the rest of the film. And it was just I thought it was phenomenal. Yeah.
And also that is one of those wonderfully timely things, because watching it 10 years from now, no one would get the subtlety of how the windows change over time and the websites they're using change over time. And it really does it conveys so much in a very canny way, where when it opens, you're oh, Jesus Christ, is this movie going to be 8-bit colors the whole time. Like, what the fuck kind of... And then you realize what they're doing, and you're like, oh, this guy knows exactly what he's doing.
And that's the thing, too, is even though you know exactly what it's going to do, you still are like, yeah, you fucking nailed that.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. Well, speaking of good, Carson Patrick, what is good enough to make your number 9 slot, canonically?
You know what I was thinking leading into one of these other movies is a slight tangent, but the other day we were watching TV and the first Men in Black was on, and I hadn't seen it in a long time. And I think first of all, I strongly urge everyone to go out and rewatch Men in Black, because not only does it still hold up, but Vincent D'Onofrio's performance in that movie as the villain, as, Edgar, or, more, like, it's next level, man. It's like, as a kid, when you watch Men in Black, you're like, oh yeah, like, he's a bad guy, like, evil. Yeah, all right. Yeah, it makes sense, He's literally a cockroach disguised as a human. Like, I buy that. Cool. But then as an adult, you're just like, oh my God, like, this is a fucking choice, man. Like, he was just, like, taking it to the next level in terms of being just, like, so wacky, like, gonzo out there performance. Like, it was, like, it became a whole new movie, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, like I said, as a kid, you never saw it that way. And then it really made me think, like, I kind of miss, like, a lot, there was a lot of that in the 90s, I feel like, and I kind of miss that, like, that kind of go for broke acting in, like, big studio movies, these days. I feel like you see very little of it. But I feel like the closest we got to that, was in Venom, with Tom Hardy, killing it. God bless Tom Hardy. He's doing, like, a Jim Carrey style, like, take on Venom. Like, it's never not entertaining. I mean, I just couldn't get enough of it. But I think maybe that's probably the closest we've come to really kind of delivering just a go for broke, insane performance in a big blockbuster like that.
So you have Venom at number 9. I mean,
Venom.
Let's be honest, Steven. There was no world in which we didn't think Venom was going to make his top 10 list.
Of course,
right?
Yeah. I just can't believe it's so low. It isn't really a numbered list, but
True. I mean, there's the top 3 and then 25 other ones. But yeah, I mean, I think that I had a lot of fun with Venom. But I think it was like Venom was 2 movies for me. Mm-hmm. It was like the movie where that Carson is praising right now, where Tom Hardy is just fucking going crazy and, like, silly things are happening. And then there was whatever the hell the story was. And I think that, like, much like
a parasite that you
much
ingest.
Like a parasite. Basically, my symbiote loved Venom. I think the host body saw the rest of the film, rejected it, and is just happy dying and letting the symbiote go away. But I mean, yeah, I think that we were both willing to get prepared for seeing whatever the next follow-up is. It made enough money that they can make a sequel. I think that we would happily watch a sequel. Obviously, I can't say obviously. I don't know. Venom might have made your list. It is a film that deals with grief.
That's true.
A romance. A super emo
Michelle Williams.
Michelle Williams. I mean, it definitely has all of the pieces.
Yeah, all of the salient pieces. No, Venom did not make my list, but I believe I liked it more than you did. I think in our review that was clear that I also see those 2 pieces, but for me, the insane Hardy as the Mask wackiness of it, like, to me the ratio was like 90% to 10%. Like, I felt like regular narrative was so not what this movie was about. I was willing to forgive it that. And I had a fun, wild ride with it. I think this was my favorite zany, ridiculous movie of the year. I know other people might have other ones that they are going to throw in as well. But for me, this was like the silly movie that I would watch and rewatch and, like, just enjoy how dumb fun it is. So yeah, no love lost for Venom. All love lost for Venom. There's no love lost. Venom is a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, yeah, that is the end of our number 9s. Let's get on to our number 8s. Stephen Miller, what was your number 8 film of 2018?
Okay, so for the last time in a row, this is going to be a film about grief, kind of. It's time to plug.
It's
pause.
the Peanuts movie.
Yeah.
Good grief.
So time to pause and say I wrote a super long essay about film and grief that you can find at sdavidmiller.com if you want to check it out. It's probably why it's been on my mind so much. Anyway, this film got quite a bit more critical attention than State Like Sleep, but still way less than I think it deserved. It's also about grief and the lengths people will go to numb themselves to it. It also has a kick-ass soundtrack. It's about somebody mourning someone that they lost, and it conveys the feeling of a specific place in a way I'd never seen on screen before. Chris, can you guess what movie I'm talking about?
I want to guess, but I'm embarrassed about getting it wrong. Is it a film that we reviewed very recently?
Kind of recently.
Like chronologically or actual duration-wise?
I'm talking, of course, about First Man.
Okay.
And like, okay, so First Man.
Your location is the moon?
Yeah, exactly. I was being clever.
You definitely tricked me.
But okay, look, I get why not all critics are hot for this movie. It's like kind of chilly, you know, compared to Whiplash, which was a panic attack, and I loved that movie, or the kind of feel-good circle jerk of La La Land, which I liked fine, but I wasn't in love with. This one feels a little bit more like removed, right? It feels more formal and restrained, mainly because Ryan Gosling is a totally stoic character as Neil Armstrong. Like, he doesn't give us much emotion to go on. But I think that criticism is like really, really missing the point of this movie. I think Armstrong might be a chilly character, but the movie itself is like so intimate, it's almost claustrophobic. It really conveys the feeling of like a human being tried to go to the moon. Let me tell you what it would be like to be a human in that situation.
Yeah,
because we've seen it dramatized in ways that kind of abstract it away as some grandly heroic thing. I've never before seen it brought down to the human level. So I spent a while this year arguing with flat earthers on the internet. I think we talked about that a little bit.
That's the real reason why you put this on the list.
Yeah, and so like they're ridiculous, and it was very frustrating. But the scenes shot in a cockpit in this movie are almost enough to convince me that they're right, because it's absolutely insane that we went to the moon when we went to the moon.
Ironically enough, I don't know if you watched the special features on this film, but they did one of those things where you have the screen, so all the outside shots of the cockpit are actually projections of the outside world, and they have a system rigged up to like they're shooting for real out those windows. It's not green screen.
Nice.
But the world is in fact flat because it's projected onto a wall.
Hot damn. But yeah, this is a movie about how insane it is that we went to space, and not just logistically insane, like the engineering feat, the danger of it, the insanity of being inside a thing with the technology of like a 1960 Volvo out in the atmosphere, hoping you won't float away into oblivion because your knob doesn't work anymore. I know what you're laughing at, and hush. But it's morally insane, like the Gil Scott-Heron song that they play in the middle of this movie about all the social issues that they should have been solving when they were instead trying to go to the moon. It's emotionally insane, like the families that it broke, the people who died in the pursuit of it, the people like Claire Foy's character who live on but have lost so much, emotionally speaking, from this journey. It's completely absurd to go to the moon. And I think this movie is about how it can still be beautiful to do an absurd thing. How humanity is all about like picking a quest and sticking with it, whether or not it makes sense, just to triumph, like just to do the damn thing. This is gonna be the most pretentious I get in this best of. But in an essay called The Myth of Sisyphus that I love, that I read like forever ago, Camus is writing about absurdity and about the philosophy of like, if life is absurd, why don't we all kill ourselves, right? Like, if there's no meaning, like that's how it opens. It says like a philosopher should believe what he says, and if I'm telling you there's no meaning to life, I should kill myself. So why don't I kill myself?
Who's got to spread the message?
Sure.
Did I get it?
No, so the conclusion that he gets to, it comes from an analogy with this character of Sisyphus from Greek tradition, who was a character that was condemned to push a stone up a hill every day. Every night the stone would fall back down. And he just repeatedly is going to push it up, knowing that it's going to fall at the end of the day and he's never going to get anywhere. And the thing that he concludes is that we have to imagine Sisyphus like looking at the rock and pushing it and feeling happy that he gets to push it. Feeling like, even though this doesn't mean anything, I fucking did it today and that's all that matters. And I think about that a lot actually in life, about like things that you do because they matter to you, because you choose to like make them mean something. And I think like the moon landing is a thing that I don't know what it gave us. Like, I don't know how it made humanity better that we went there. I don't know what we learned exactly, like what we did. But I know that putting someone on that rock and like that moment when you land on that rock and the aspect ratio changes and you're in IMAX and you're just out there on the stone, it matters because you've been pushing so hard to get there. And I think this movie just like conveys that feeling in a way that I really, really liked.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those films that had like an incredibly amazing experience in IMAX. And I know some people were like, but it was just in IMAX at the end. But I was like, I really think that transition in that moment really, it's also like, it's a transition to IMAX and then about a minute and a half of just silence
yeah.
And seeing the surface of the moon and seeing like the no face of the mask of the people who are out there. And it's just, I think it did so many things. And it was one of the only experiential films of the year where you're not just like, it's not a brain shut off film. It's a film where you are like experiencing the journey of the character from their point of view, and it makes you feel what you're seeing instead of just think about what you're saying. You know, like Apollo 13, great film. People praised it. Mm-hmm. You care about what's happened to the characters, but you don't feel the cold. You don't feel the intensity of those moments. You just understand that it was crazy. And this film,
you know that it's dangerous because Americans are watching on their TV set at home, and you feel what they're feeling from the newscaster. You're not feeling like what it feels like to be there.
Yeah. And I think that this film just does that in an amazing way. So 3 cheers for
absurdity.
yeah, that too. All right. My number 8. All right, so my number 8 doesn't technically count as a coincidence, but a lot of the things that you attributed to First Man before you said it was First Man, I interpreted as potentially being another film, which is the film that made my number 8 on the list, and that is Thunder Road, which is a film that is about a place. Family features very specific music.
Yep.
It is about grieving of somebody that you've lost, and really about the lengths that one person might go to deal with that grief. So literally,
we really had a grief-filled year. God damn.
But yeah, I mean, this is literally the newest episode in our feed. So before this episode, if you go back to the last episode, you can hear me gush over this film. It is a film that I wasn't even going to see. I saw the trailer and was like, not for me. And then Steven kept jokingly saying, you could always watch this on VOD for our marathon review list. And I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to watch this on VOD. And I watched it and I was fucking floored by this film. Like, it's really incredible. It's an amazing performance, a complex performance, literally bouncing back and forth between every emotion in the course of one scene about a person dealing with grief who is not quite stable, but is incredibly sympathetic. You want him to succeed. You want the rest of the world to respond in the way that is not necessarily appropriate as they should, but appropriate for the way that will calm him down. And it was a film that, once again, took me, like First Man, took me on a journey with this character of feeling just the tragedy of what he's experiencing in his life. And just the honest to God trying to just do good. Like, just to act appropriately for the people around him so that they don't think that he's not stable while he's just trying to hold it together as his world is falling apart.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a fantastic film. And I really, really enjoyed it. Huge surprise for me. Yeah. And more people should go rent it.
I completely agree. So this is an honorable mention for me. The only real reason I didn't slot it in as a number 10 type pick is because I felt pretty sure you were going to talk about it already. Because this is that kind of like hidden gem that it might not be for everyone, but if it's for you, it's going to be really fucking for you. And I think Jim Cummings gives an amazing performance. I talked in our review already how the fact that a movie about Thunder Road, the song, even existed was enough for me already, because I'm so fucking nostalgic about that song. The soundtrack is great. Otherwise, we played some other things from it in our review. I think it's just a really delicate, tiny film about grief, and I love these films that manage to, on a what I can only imagine is a micro budget, right, to tell like a really compelling story with just a few characters and say like, hey, we don't need all that flash, right? We can make a human story with whatever we have around us already. We can tell it in our home, and I think. Yeah, it's just a lovely movie. It actually thematically ties kind of well with the next movie I'm going to talk about, but we'll let Carson weigh in first. But yeah, I totally recommend Thunder Road. I think it is a gem waiting on iTunes, and I hope more people find it and check it out.
All right, Carson Patrick, what was your number 8?
Let's see. Oh, geez, there's just too much good stuff to choose from. Oh, another movie. Here we go. This one, talk about a good comedy that didn't make you feel terrible afterwards, even though I feel like that was the theme this year. I feel like that was where it was at. That's at least where I was at. But the movie Crystal, which has Nick Robinson in it, and it's man, what a fucking wacky movie. I loved it, man. It was just a great like screwball rom-com. There's just all kinds of tones and fun going on in this movie, but I'd say like it's a pretty great setup because it's like Nick Robinson plays a dude who it's pretty much like the opposite of Crank. Like Jason Statham, had to keep his heart rate up, and here Nick Robinson has to do everything to not stimulate his heart. So he abstains from drinking and drugs and falling in love because he doesn't want to pass out because he has this like rare heart condition or whatever. So of course, naturally, he falls in love with Rosario Dawson and immediately passes out upon seeing her. And it has probably one of the strangest meet cutes, which is he pretends to be an alcoholic so he can hang out or meet Rosario Dawson in an AA meeting, which leads to all sorts of shenanigans, including T.I., who's also in the movie, shows up as Rosario Dawson's like ex-lover and also ex-pimp because she's also like an escort in the movie. So there's just all kinds of great layers, hilarious, wacky layers to it. But T.I., like, he completely steals this movie, man. Like, he's an underrated, I think, comedic actor. Like, we've seen him do the comedy in like the Ant-Man movies, but here he just walks away with the whole movie. And and this movie was directed by William H. Macy, who's also in the movie. So there you go.
All right, so there's the film Crystal. I believe neither of us saw this film either.
No, though I'm sure it relates to your number 1 of the year, Love, Simon.
Steven, don't spoil it.
Sorry.
It's my number 2. I mean, obviously, Happy Anniversary is number 1. But yeah, I mean, I basically, as we were slotting in these things, I think this one made me laugh the most with Carson's description of being the opposite of Crank. Because Crank is a film that is ridiculous and has a lot of love on this podcast as a whole. I don't know if you enjoy them as much as Carson and I do.
I
Steven.
have honestly never seen the Crank movies.
Oh, we got to.
But isn't the opposite of Crank Canark?
Is that Crank backwards?
I think so.
Anyways. I just thought it was very, very funny. I remember seeing this trailer somewhere, maybe on like the iTunes or Apple trailer page. But yeah, I have not seen it and don't have a lot to talk about other than I thought it was a funny description of Reverse Crank because I have no idea. I was like, what the fuck is Reverse Crank? And then he described it and I was like, it's Reverse
sense,
Crank.
yeah.
I mean, I'm totally on board with that.
Reverse Crank is heart disease.
Yeah. All right. So we are on to number 7s now. Stephen Miller, what was your number 7 film?
So, Narc may not describe Crank backwards, but it could. I'm going to get through this. It could describe the protagonist of this next film. This is
White Boy Rick.
that would be more apt. So this is a movie. I don't know if I want to try to make you guess it or not. Let's see. It is a period piece. It is a film that I saw quite a bit before you did. It is a movie that the ending is really what sets the tone of the film, and without the ending, it would be a very different movie.
Does it have 3 Ks in the middle of the title?
Yeah. So I'm talking about BlacKkKlansman, Spike Lee's movie about a police infiltration of the Ku Klux Klan in the 70s in Colorado Springs. This is a movie, we've talked about it at length already on the podcast. It's a movie that is ostensibly a celebration of one man's infiltration of the KKK. I don't even remember the Ron Stallworth. Ron Stallworth.
Stallworth Brothers.
Yeah, so Ron Stallworth is the police officer who has managed to masquerade himself as a KKK member. The surprise being that he is a black man in the movie. And he basically on the phone manages to infiltrate the KKK, convince them that he is one of them, that he agrees with their hateful rhetoric, and the goal is to oust them, basically figure out what violent things they're planning and stop it from happening. This is a movie that, like, for the bulk of its runtime is a very fun, kind of silly period piece about, like, it's almost like a riff on those 70s cop shows. It's, like, kind of rosy and nostalgia tinged, and it's, like, the villains are very cheesy in this movie. Like, the KKK they're menacing in what they represent, but the actual characters who play them are kind of bumbling idiots most of the time. Yeah. And it feels almost too good to be true. And then, I won't spoil the exact contents, but the ending really pulls the rug out from under you. And honestly, the ending is what makes the movie for me, because it does something that I have not had another movie do before, where it leaves you in total silence. Like, an audience who is seeing this for the first time, they don't know how to react after what Spike Lee does at the end of this movie. And I think the message it is telling is very potent. I think it's a movie that makes you think. It's a movie that demands a second watch after you're kind of informed by the end over what should I take at face value, what should I take as satire, what am I learning about that is, like, too good to be true. I think Adam Driver gives a great performance in here too, kind of like an unsung, wonderful acting job of the year. Adam Driver is great in everything.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot of layers here to the way the movie deals with race and society, and then an ending that kind of casts a big question mark covered shadow all over it in a way that I just thought was very provocative in the best way. It reminded me a lot of Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. It's not quite up there with that movie, but I think it definitely is a powerful thing that only a filmmaker like him could do, which is, like, it isn't a practical joke, but it's a movie that, like, is wound up to be one way just so it can pummel you over the head. And I think even if you know that, you still won't be ready for how it feels when it happens in the end. So yeah, this was one of the more visceral film-going experiences for me in the emotions that it left me with at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a very interesting film. I think I had complicated feelings about how it handled the subject matter as far as the joking level that the film takes.
Many people did.
Yeah. And I think that, like, that ending, it is strong. I went into that ending with some misguided things due to some temporal issues, reading some articles about the production of the film that happened to have incorrect information. May have potentially biased my reaction to the ending of the film, but I had some complicated feelings of it as a whole. I think it's a very interesting film. I think it brings up a lot of interesting ideas, especially in addition to the obvious ones that the film is doing, but kind of how it juxtaposes the Adam Driver's character and his participation in this event. And there's a lot of things that it's doing that is very interesting. I appreciate that the film exists. That ending does have a wallop to it. And it's amazing too, like, we've seen this footage that you see before, but on the screen in that way, following that stuff it just has a different context and a weight to it that
you've recalibrated yourself, so when it comes, it feels different than it normally would.
Yeah, and I appreciate the existence of the film. It didn't hit all the things that would make me celebrate to the level of putting on a list, but
yeah,
it's an interesting film.
So you know how when we talked about Green Book, I described Green Book as like the movie I would take my racist uncle to on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I think this is... Spike Lee is obviously aiming for higher than that, but I think this is a very didactic movie in the sense that this is a movie that, for most of it, you know, it's giving good themes all the way along. It isn't like it's just completely lying to you. It has lots of stuff about, like, the tension between the police and society, the way that Ron Stallworth's character is struggling to figure out where he fits in.
Yeah.
And I think it really is meant to kind of hold the hand of people who are uncertain how they feel about this or maybe hardened in their ways. And I think for an audience like that, especially that kind of punch in the face at the end, I would be really interested to see what that happens. So I think Spike Lee does it better than Peter Farrelly. But they are both, I think, mostly aiming at a white audience that maybe needs to hear that lesson.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So my number 7, very, very different subject matter, but it also deals with a group of people who are doing some nefarious acts and trying to hurt people around the world. It involves a person trying to infiltrate that group or organization, and it is a film that is not the first in the series.
Yeah, I was going to jokingly say Robin Hood, but it's Mission Impossible Fallout, right?
It's Mission Impossible Fallout. The Mission Impossible franchise, over the life of this podcast, has just upped the ante and gotten more and more incredible. And it's gotten to a level where it's like, how are they going to have a new, bigger bad that is trying to ruin things? They've been competing or having to compete against the James Bond franchise with very similar plots,
extremely
like Hydra-like organizations with many, many heads being cut off, many, many whatevers. I'm mixing metaphors now, but you know what I mean. But it's a series that's had to compete with James Bond, which has historically been one of my favorite series. Not one of my favorite, but it's like the thing that like I always see whenever it's on. I want to watch it when the next one's coming out. I want to see what's going on. Mission Impossible went from being like this one film that was really, really interesting to this series that has been building and building and becoming more and more my favorite, to where, like I've said on the podcast before, I want a Mission Impossible every single year. Mm-hmm. Every year, I want it to be the new Star Wars, where just every year there's another one. Yeah. And as they go bigger and bigger and the gadgets become more and more complex and they do more and more interesting things, it's like, how can you possibly come up with a more clever, interesting stunt or gadget to give Ethan Hunt to be celebrated? And at some point, you're not going to be able to continue it and make it better. So what does this film do? It turns the film around and points the whole thing on who Ethan Hunt is as a man. And not just about him being this like Terminator who can get through everything, but being this fragile man who has emotional connections to things in the world, and puts him not through the ringer physically. I mean, it does put him through the ringer physically. Like he's physically in real life, the actor is hurt making this film. But it makes it a very, very touching, emotionally satisfying story of who this man is and what he has sacrificed to save the world 7 times or whatever it is. I don't know what it actually is. It's like 5 films, right? This is Mission Impossible.
This is the 6th one.
This is the 6th one? Okay. But it's like this man is not a Terminator. He's a man, and he has connections to the world, and he's given up so much. And this film kind of is like, what if this one man knew your weak points, not as a physical human, but as an emotional being? And what if he just twisted a little bit? And I think this film does something that is, I was not ready for the emotional level this film took, and like making the character really feel like a person who cares about something besides just completing the mission. And I think that was an amazing feat. Plus, he's fucking doing all these crazy stunts. He learned to fly a helicopter. This is just an amazing film.
And an amazing movie to see in IMAX this year, especially. Yeah. I mean, there's so many shots in this movie, like jumping out of a helicopter or jumping out of a plane. I don't even remember that, but
yeah, jumping out of a plane, flying a helicopter.
Yeah, diving out of a plane, having a camera follow you in focus all the way down, flying a helicopter solo, and knowing it is real, like knowing like you are literally doing it. Stunt work alone makes this an absolutely incredible movie. One of the biggest accomplishments of the year. I'm pretty sure it's not going to make your list, so I can mention that I saw Free Solo this weekend in IMAX, and my main takeaway was, okay, this is an amazing stunt film. Like, the things that it is showing, the feat of human behavior, like human accomplishment.
Yeah.
MI6 is still better. Mission Impossible Fallout is still showing something more impressive to me about humanity. It's an amazing movie. A super great ride. I struggled until the minute before this podcast to put this on my top 10, and I knew you were going to do it, so I decided I could live without doing it because the gospel of Ethan Hunt is going to get out of their way. Not to be confused with the apostles, which Ethan Hunt is fighting in this movie.
But yeah, so that is my number 7. Carson Patrick, what is your number 7?
The movie Mute, which I really, really loved. This was also on Netflix. This was Duncan Jones' new movie that I feel like really kind of got swept under the rug. Like, people were really unkind to it, which I thought was a bummer because this movie is, I would say it's just as strong, if not stronger in some aspects, as Moon. Purely because, just like on an ambitious level, like this movie is just, I mean, thank God for Netflix for bankrolling this movie. This was the project that Duncan Jones, it's a passion project that he wanted to do even before Moon. And there's a couple of really cool tie-ins to Moon actually in Mute. And, I really enjoyed the world of it. And, Paul Rudd is in it, and his character is so entertaining in this movie. I think it's one of my favorite Paul Rudd performances. Just very unexpected, I guess, of what we're used to seeing Paul Rudd do, but really, really awesome. And so good that I decided to dress up as his character for Halloween. Not that that matters or anyone cares, but we all know you lurk that shit. Come on.
Lurk that shit indeed. So Mute, I think it's fun to guess what is going to be on Carson's top 10 list. And I think that Mute is on brand because last year he had Bright, which is another Netflix film, which was panned by a lot of people. A lot of people just fucking hated Bright. Yeah. And Carson loved Bright, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And
he's on the one-syllable Netflix train.
But I think that Mute is a film that when I heard it was a thing that was coming, I got excited for it because I love Duncan Jones.
Sure, of course.
And I think I passed on Mute specifically because I had heard so many bad things about it. And what really made me sad is that, like, being somebody who loves Duncan Jones, like, having two kind of what feels in my head like two huge missteps, World of Warcraft, which I did see, or not World of Warcraft, it was just called Warcraft. But seeing the Warcraft film and just being like, oh man, like, I want Duncan Jones to make amazing things. And then he follows it up with Mute, and I'm just like, fuck, I want you to make amazing things, and I want you to keep getting amazing things to do. And it's just, every time there's a misstep, it makes me very, very sad. But Mute, maybe I should give it a chance. I've been on a little sci-fi kick on Netflix, trying to watch a bunch of sci-fi things. So I'm willing to check it out. I just finally, I know I'm late to the party, but just started Altered Carbon. Maybe when that's done, I'll take a watch of Mute, see how it goes.
Yeah, I would watch this. So I was one of the people who didn't even know it existed. I don't remember hearing. Maybe was it like February? Like early this year?
I don't honestly remember.
I kind of remember early this year hearing about Duncan Jones and hearing like a little bit of an excitement and then it getting tempered with critical hatred. So maybe that was it.
Yep, it was February 23rd.
Okay, yeah. So it was like not really on my radar. And now that I was telling you, I've got my couch set up. I'm way more primed to watch Netflix movies at night that I don't care about.
Why would you be
much.
primed to watch Netflix things?
I got
That's a
Amazon
little video
Prime.
streaming joke.
Yeah, I know. I'm Hulu'd up to watch Netflix things. And yeah, I think I would cue it in. I'm intrigued enough. Like, there have definitely been things that critics have not loved that I've been into. I feel like a Duncan Jones movie is worth a try.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Stephen Miller, you know what else is worth a try?
What?
Whatever your number 6 film is.
Speaking of things critics have not loved, I'm going to give a movie that canonically critics loved so much they gave the Palme d'Or at Cannes to.
Nice.
Yeah. So for the most part on this list, I tried to keep out festival things that I didn't get to revisit just because, you know, it's been a long time. You're kind of on a high when you're watching things. It's hard to really know how you feel. But Shoplifters, I was not hesitant at all, even though I have not caught up with this since May when I first saw it. It's a Japanese film by Hirokazu Korida. It's a family drama about kind of a makeshift family on the outskirts of Tokyo that are learning to get by, even though there's not a lot of money to go around. There's not a lot of typical comforts, but they have each other. And it's kind of a film about how we make ad hoc families wherever we go. How do we define the boundary of a family? Who is in it? Who is not in it? How much family and bonds can kind of be a choice that we make where we choose to protect each other, choose to love each other. We talked about this movie so recently. I don't really have anything more to say about it.
Yeah.
I think this is a very good, heartfelt Steven movie that gets upped into a great movie by a third act that I didn't see coming. You were in a mindset where you saw it coming a mile out. I had been so lulled by the searing family drama, I had kind of forgotten any complicating factors around it. And I just think it's an interesting movie that kind of, it pulls your heartstrings, and then at the end, it doesn't sever them, but it does something to them. Like, it does something that you're not ready for. And I just feel like it leaves a good emotional imprint on you. I've only seen this and his movie called Still Standing, but apparently there's a whole slew of later films by him that I should check out. And apparently they all are like this, where they're weepy family dramas. So I got my couch worked out for me for the next couple weeks, I think.
Do you have your tissues, though? That's the question.
I do, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, as you said, we've reviewed this recently, or better put, we have released an episode recently with a review of this film.
Yeah. I listen when you release them, so I feel like we reviewed it recently.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a film that I appreciated. I didn't love it as much as you did, or the critics did, but it was definitely a film that was very interesting. I was too caught up in, like, the implications of this as if it were a real story. Like, I was just so dumbfounded by, like, what was happening. Just character choices and things in this universe that, like, I was a little distracted from a very, very heartfelt, very, very interesting story about what it means to be a family. Yeah, I mean, I still support all the love for this film. It is a great film, but it's not making my list, sadly. All right, so my number 6 film, I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe our first overlap film, at least based on a joke you made earlier in the episode. My number 6 film is
8th grade.
Is a Moo. It is the film 8th Grade, which is about how old Steven is. 8th Grade.
Named for the year Chris peaked.
So yes, Stephen is correct. My number 6 film is 8th Grade. It is a film that we saw at SF Film Festival. It is a very, very touching story about a young 13-year-old girl who is finishing up the 8th grade and about ready to move into junior high school.
Yeah.
I don't know how school works in the United States. But it's just really just this very touching experiential film about this girl and what it's like to be in her own body, to be present in the world that she has to be in, which is this junior high school, and just kind of her fears and hopes and dreams about what life is going to be like when she moves to high school. And it's really just this amazing film that I didn't think was possible, that, like, this like comedian guy could write this story that felt so real and honest about this young 13-year-old girl. And it's an incredible film that is really, really, it's nice. It's charming. It still pains me that my 3 sisters, who are all 12 plus years younger than me,
they not seen
have
it yet?
not seen this film yet.
Oh my God.
Every time I see them, which is like once or twice a year now, it came out this year. So anyways, every time I talk to them, I text them after we saw the film. I saw them at Christmas. I asked them, saw them sometime after we saw the film. I said, have you seen this film yet? And they always say no. I don't know why. It's a film that I think everybody should see. And I think even as a 35-year-old male, I can still feel this experience as this young 13-year-old girl. And it does something that's really, really impressive. Yeah. I had minor nitpicks about the film back when we saw it. But it's a really amazing film, and I'm so happy to have seen it this year.
Now, do you remember when we watched the Q&A for Skate Kitchen, how there was this feeling that, like...
I did not see the film
Skate Kitchen. Not Skate Kitchen, sorry. Mid-90s.
Mid-90s, yeah.
How people were asking the cast members things that they were not old enough at the time to step outside of and really examine.
Yeah.
I wonder if your sisters would feel that way, like at least the younger ones. I wonder if we relate, even though it rings as so authentic, this movie, and... spoilers, I'm going to talk about this later, so I'm not going to blow too much here. Even though it rings so authentic, I wonder if it is authentic in a way that older people looking back have a perspective that makes that authenticity powerful, in a way where people closer to that age just see it as like, yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if it means more to us than it would to people who are closer to that actual life.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely possible. Yeah, I mean...
Because I watch it as like... as her, but also as her dad, right?
Yeah.
We both see it as like her not knowing how great she is and how much her life is going to change. And that perspective, I think, is just like I think that is why you have a male 30-something director who made it, right? It kind of like straddles the line between both worlds. And I think it's a lovely movie, and we are going to talk about it more later.
Sounds good. The real question is Carson going to talk about it now? I don't think he is. Carson, what are you going to talk about? What is your number 6 film?
Destination Wedding. This is the movie that reunited Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. And it's basically like a Richard Linklater, like if Jesse and Celine were just really terrible, unlikable characters, and they went to their friend's wedding and just bonded over their... disdain for weddings and just life in general. And it's a lot of fun to watch. I think it's a testament to the charisma and the chemistry between Keanu and Winona, because they really make you the unlikable likable. Like they keep you invested in these characters.
Destination Wedding. Probably, again, a film that neither of us saw.
I never even heard of it, but I'm intrigued by Keanu and Winona together.
I definitely saw the poster for this film, but that is as much as I have to say about it.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Not to downplay.
Not at all.
The it making the list, but yeah, it's a film that we have nothing, no knowledge of. But yeah, that is Carson's number 6.
Yeah, so we are now at the halfway point. I was going to acknowledge that we had not yet had any overlap in our list. That's still true by technicality, but now with my all-seeing eye into the future, I know that it isn't true totally. But it almost makes me want to amend my guess from 3 to 2, but we will see.
Ooh.
You have more information than I do, probably, at this point. I know at least one movie I said that I'm almost certain is going to be on your list later, but we'll find out.
Technically, yes, I have more knowledge than you, but technically you also have just as much more knowledge than me.
Sure.
That's a sentence.
True. Yeah, that's a good sentence.
But I think I know what you're hinting at.
Yep. Anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting year. But I am now finally going to go a little bit lighter than before. We're done with grief for a little while. We're moving on. upbeat is the wrong word, but I think the tone of this movie is much more natural. So to start Tribeca this year, we watched a screening of Tully. After the screening, Tamara Jenkins was interviewing Jason Reitman about his process, about how much of his own life informed that movie, about how Parenthood changed his view on the world and vice versa. He casually mentioned that they seem to be writing about the same things at the same time. This is not me putting Tully at my number 5. This is about her movie, Private Life, the movie that he was referencing at the time. So I think I'm starting a tradition. Tradition?
Is it a prediction of a tradition?
Yep. I'm starting a tradition where every year I put a certain kind of Netflix movie that is based in New York, that's made by like a lighthearted auteur that is doing something interesting about families that should be pretentious but don't come off that way because the actors are so damn good.
And last year it was Meyerowitz
Yeah,
stories?
last year it was the Meyerowitz stories. This year it is Private Life by Tamara Jenkins. Private Life is like the perfect Steven movie, that kind of wistful movie, like Landline. Right? There's something about New York movies, right, where like they just feel you cozy into them right away. Like you just feel like this is the vibe. I am ready to watch 2 hours of these characters interacting. It is a movie that I said it was lighthearted, but the topic is not. The topic is a couple who are trying to conceive. They've been trying for a very long time. Catherine Hahn and Paul Giamatti are a married couple, and after expending every other option, they attempt IVF, and they have a kind of hit or miss period of time where they are spending so much money trying to get pregnant and nothing seems to be working out. And I don't know how much to reveal about this movie without giving away what happens in it, but basically they go through a bunch of different attempts. They are both people who were kind of formerly, quote, cool. They were artistic in their youth. They thought they had all the time in the world to get pregnant. And now that they really want to, it feels like the world has kind of passed them by. They reach out to all their friends and family. So his brother and sister-in-law are John Carroll Lynch and Molly Shannon. They're a kind of more wealthy couple that he has to borrow money from frequently so they can pay for this. IVF is fucking expensive if you didn't know. That's a lot of money. There are also some characters in this that I won't reveal. One played by Kaylee Carter, who I think is a newcomer, who might be a person who can carry the egg, and they start eyeing her in a way that is... It's a strange thing to bring up, right? There's a lot of strange social issues that come up here in terms of how do people approach a subject so personal and so complicated. And I think this movie, like Tully, is very unflinching in its view of the messy, ugly, uncomfortable aspects of conception and parenthood, but it is also very funny, not only darkly funny, but lighthearted in a way and wistful. It talks about the toll it exerts on a relationship. And so you might remember this great scene in Before Midnight where Julie Delpy is in an argument with Ethan Hawke, and for like 20 minutes she's topless during it, and it's kind of like a, quote, brave performance, you know? Catherine Hahn one-ups that in an amazing, hilarious way in this movie. I love this movie. I watched it a rainy day forever ago, and I remember it so well. I feel like I have lived the life of these characters, and I just think it's a great look into a very specific aspect of life, the toll that it takes on their relationship. I just think it's wonderful. Catherine Hahn and Paul Giamatti in everything forever. The end.
Yeah, this is a film that is still on my list of things to watch. From everything I've heard about it from Steven and from other podcasts that I've listened to talking about it, it seems like it's going to be a film that I'm very much enjoyed. I have unfortunately listened to some spoiler conversations about it because there are times when you stop a podcast to not go into spoilers, but then you listen to other episodes from a podcast and you're washing dishes and then spoilers start, but your hands are all wet. There's nothing you can do.
We've all been there.
And you just say, fuck it, I'm going to listen to spoilers for this conversation. But it's still a film that I'm excited to listen to. And yeah.
Yep. It's a good one. On Netflix, quite a few movies we talk about actually are streaming on some platform already. So that is one thing about 2018. You can definitely access a lot of these movies already.
All right, so on to my number 5. My number 5 film, the question is, are we going to get into more overlap territory or not? My little spying eye has determined that we are not, because I happen to have it on good authority that Steven has not seen this film yet.
Oh, shit.
And that is the film Hereditary. Hereditary is a film that, while I might not care too much for the ending of this film, the fucking ride of this film is incredible. I think this is a fantastic film that builds dread and wonder and just fear for what is about to happen.
I haven't heard wonder before.
It's thanks, Steven. But it's just a film that, like, okay, here's the thing, right? Carson likes to tease us for seeing films at the Alamo Drafthouse. This is an audio podcast, so people don't know, but I like to eat. Mm-hmm. This is the first time I've been in an Alamo Drafthouse film where at the end of the film, my food was still there, and the guy had to ask me if I wanted a box because I could not.
And Chris cut his head off.
Oh, Steven, the irony of your statement.
I know.
But no, I literally had not eaten my food because I was couldn't move, didn't want to make a sound. There is a moment in this film in the center where I put my hand over my mouth and I held it there for about what felt like 10 minutes before I was like, oh, I can at least try to nibble one fry now. It is a film that is incredible. And I think that some of the performance in this, there is a scene around a dinner table of just a family arguing and screaming things at each other. That is like the most incredible emotional moment one of the most incredible emotional moments that I've seen this year. And I think that this is a film that just does so many things right that even though the ending is weird and crazy, and like as I'm leaving the theater and I hear people talk about knowledge that they gleaned from outside of this film, I was like, all right, okay, this is important to somebody. I didn't care. Like just the experience of watching this film and the journey of where it's going and how emotional this film is and how much it talks about the dynamics between families and mental illness and things about growing up supporting people that you love or want to love or feel the need to love but maybe can't love because of issues. Like this film is incredible, and maybe it's not the best horror film that's ever been invented, but it's so like it's just so well made. Mm-hmm. And Toni Collette deserves some sort of award for that scene alone in this film. And I just it's so much of this film I love, and when I walked away, it sat with me, and it was just so impressive, the achievement of what happened in this film, that I knew that it was going to arrive on my list somewhere. And as I was sitting there making the list, I was like, you know what? This is a perfect number 5 slot. And it still pains me that Steven has not seen this film yet.
I have not. I am a famous wimp. I'm a famous person who is terrified of horror on this podcast. I rented this movie when I left for India like a month ago now. Jesus, that was a long time. I rented this along with like 6 other things. I watched all 5 of the other ones. I kept putting off watching Hereditary. I believed I would most likely be able to watch it on an airplane or in the middle of the afternoon, right? Like some situation where I will not be scared. Yeah. Where maybe the images won't burn in my brain. But everyone, even people who wanted me to see it, told me images will burn in your brain. And I don't want that. I don't want that in my life. I don't know. I think this is one thing. I listened to a few top 10 lists like in mid-December when people started doing it. And Hereditary was not making as many as I thought it would. So I was like, okay, I can morally not watch this movie and still record a top 10 list. I promise I will watch it. I will watch this movie. I'm not going to like it. Chris is going to have to do cuddle time afterwards.
And Joanna's just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, she'll watch. I will see it. But no, I don't know. There's just something... I know certain images can like last with me for months, and yeah. I am terrified of what this movie could do to my brain.
I without saying too much, I will say the thing that isn't the actual image will last with you more than the image itself will.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Confucius.
All right, so we have a commitment for Steven on watching Heredity.
I promise by March I will have seen Hereditary.
That's a strangely specific date, especially considering like nothing.
Well, I figure you're going to edit this like end of February.
Oh, touche, Steven. Touche. It's actually live streaming to the internet right now.
Oh shit!
So we have a commitment from Steven to watch Hereditary. Carson Patrick, you have committed to your list canonically which film?
The movie Arizona came in. This movie, I think, would definitely, if I had to do a official top 5, this would be in the top 5 for sure, because it is fucked up and it is just so dark and funny. But it's pretty, like, it's not something I'd seen before for sure. It's basically, I guess they would classify it as a comedy, but it's basically a horror movie that's set in 2009 during the housing crisis in like an abandoned subdivision in Arizona, obviously. Danny McBride is the lead, and he plays a guy who loses his house, and he decides to get revenge on his realtor, played by Rosemary DeWitt. And it plays exactly like a horror movie, down to like all the tropes of, you know, Danny McBride being the unstoppable killer and Rosemary DeWitt being the final girl. I mean, you could very easily switch Danny McBride out for Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers or anything like that, and it would play just the same. But man, it's so funny. Like, it's just, I appreciate it. It's just commitment to bleakness. And extreme nihilism, but that's, you know, one of the reasons why I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, I feel like it didn't get a lot of love, but man, I really, really enjoyed that movie.
All right, so that is the film Arizona. I remember the poster for this distinctly, probably because I saw it posted to Sarah's Facebook feed or something like that, most likely. But I have not seen this film. Mm-hmm.
I have not either. When he said the name, I imagine a Danny McBride reboot of Raising Arizona, which I would watch the hell out of. But I'm afraid I don't know anything about Arizona.
Cool. All right. Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that means it's time to move on to our number 4s.
All right. So you mentioned with your listing of Searching at number 8, I believe.
Yep.
That it elevated in your mind by watching it silently on airplane screens while you were traveling. And I have a movie that is like that too.
Based on my airplane travels, can I randomly guess? It's probably not your answer.
No, go for it.
If I were to pick the other film that I watched at least 10 times while traveling on airplanes, that would be the film Crazy Rich Asians.
That is not correct, but that is a good guess. No, the film I saw is one that I'm proving that podcasts are not a canonical ranking of anything, because when I reviewed this, I specifically said I did not like it as much as Black Klansman. And this is a movie called Blind Spotting, and I have since changed my mind dramatically. So 2 things happened. I watched this on a plane a few months ago when I realized it had come out, and I really wanted to revisit it. And over my last month of travel, I've seen it on screens, including on Joanna's screen right next to me. And without hearing it, just catching it in my periphery, I would feel stress. I would feel intensity. I would know exactly what was happening. And I would have this feeling of like, oh my God, she's about to watch this part. How is she going to react to this?
Yeah.
And Blind Spotting is just... So there have been a bunch of films this year that were either the, quote, Oakland films, Black Panther, Sorry to Bother You, Blind Spotting, all fit in that category, where they're at least in part about Oakland and the way Oakland is changing and what it represents to people, or films about race in America, particularly from the Black experience, like Black Klansman is another one that came out in this kind of string of summer movies that were all hammering different points home on this theme. And I feel like at the time when I first saw it, I liked it a lot, but it felt very personal and almost like whimsical. Like the tone of it was sometimes it was very upbeat. Sometimes it was very, very, very dark. And I didn't know exactly how to get a handle on it. And now the longer I sit with it, the more personal it feels to Oakland as a whole and the kind of contradictions that someone might feel growing up in Oakland and watching it change over the years. I think there's a lot of love for the local character that David Diggs feels in this movie. But then there's a feeling of the way it's changing and how some of those changes might be beneficial to him personally. Some of them might be losing something very deep. I think this is a movie that plays really, really well with the highs and lows, with the way that you can love a place and feel mixed about the place and be terrified at the same time. I think it dives into certain themes that other movies like BlacKkKlansman have explored, like the relationship with the police and the people, but in a much more direct, personal way. I think the use of music in this movie is very, very, very good. The reason I watched it again on a plane was because I wanted to watch the spoken word pieces in particular. And there was a moment when I was trying to transcribe the rap that he does at the end of this movie, and watching that 4 times or 5 times in a row, that is an intense scene. And that does not wear off when you know that it's coming. I think it's just really a very, very, very powerful movie. It's a movie that I think is very personal and specific. It does not feel like any other movie this year. I told you before how I saw Ike Barinholtz's The Oath the other night. The movie about a person feeling the weight of anger in the current political climate and turning it into... In Ike Barinholtz's movie, it is an act of violence. It's like the world is on fire and Thanksgiving dinner becomes insane all of a sudden because you just have to get out this anger that you're feeling. I think Blindspotting does that and like 8 more things so much better. In the feeling of hopelessness and the feeling of anger and the feeling of like, why does no one else see this thing that is obsessing me right now? I just think it's a really brilliant film, and I think if anything is going to really be like the picture of what 2018 was like, I think Blindspotting is it, of that grappling with highs and lows, lights and darks, and this kind of like very, very, very weird feeling of I hate the moment I'm in and I love the moment I'm in and I don't know who to be anymore. That is a movie that just really grew in my estimation the longer I sat with it.
I wholeheartly agree. I wholeheartedly agree so much that my number 4 film is Blindspotting.
Hell yeah. High five.
Also, what you just heard was Steven and I awkwardly trying to high five across 2 boom mics across the table. But yeah, I think Blindspotting is a fucking phenomenal film. This is a film that, like some of the other films I mentioned, fucking came out of nowhere. This is a film that literally the first time I'd ever heard the title Blindspotting was from MoviePass's email, like pushing the film. And I was like, what is this film? And it was not on my radar. I had not seen a trailer. I went in and saw this film, and it is phenomenal. I mean, this is a film that there are several films that you mentioned that sort of deal with the Black experience and kind of what it's like to grow up Black. And this is a film that doesn't just try to tell you that story through a heightened reality or through a comedic way or to try to juxtapose it to something else. This is a film that makes you feel that in a way that I haven't seen on film before. This is a film that doesn't just make me think about something. It makes me feel the dread moment to moment. This is a story about 2 friends who grew up in the same conditions, the same neighborhood, best friends their whole life. The only difference between the 2 of them is that one is white and one is Black. And this film follows their day-to-day lives and sort of how, even though 99.99999% of their life experience is identical, they are almost the exact same person, but one has the benefit of being white and the other doesn't. And it tackles that in a way that I have not seen on film till seeing this film, and in a way that, like, every single scene, you're constantly in dread about what's happening. Every time a car drives by, you're worried about what's going on. As he tries to protect his friend, you're worried about how his attempts to try to protect the friend will play against him. The relationships he has with his girlfriend, and like the changing environment. Like, this film does so many things so well and in such a powerful way that it was like I walked out of this film just being like, that I did not expect that. Like, this is a film that came literally, I might as well just walked in.
I was completely blind.
No pun intended. Like, completely blind walking into this film, and just like I was like, wow, that was an amazing film. And I think it was something that just I was, from the moment I saw it, I was glad that I had seen it. And when I saw other films dealing with the same subject matter this year, they all felt a little less, just because they all chose a sort of like they tried to backdoor their way into talking about the subject matter. Like, let me give you a heightened reality version of this so that you can think about it on your own. This is a film that just, like, really, there's nothing you can do when watching this film other than feel the experience of this film. And I think that...
Right. It's very direct. It isn't trying to be clever about it at all. It's trying to be like, here is how I feel. How would you feel?
Yeah. And the film complicates it as much as it can, and it wants to tell you like a very interesting story from many, many points of view and make you deal with all of it. And it's such an amazing film that needs to be seen by more people and should be celebrated. So
I totally agree. I think a few things that elevate it. So one is, so you mentioned this is not just the story of Daveed Diggs' character. It's Daveed Diggs growing up with Rafael Casal, his friend, who is also born and raised in Oakland. Very similar in behavior, even in his language until rather late in the movie when there's a big conversation about it.
Yeah, which is fucking amazing.
It's so good.
That scene is so really, really amazing.
And I think for a movie to veer into that, to not only be about the black experience, but to be about like an honest look at the way that a white character in the same conditions would coexist in that space. And it isn't pandering to it. It isn't being like super didactic. It's being very real and very genuine.
Yeah.
That's just something I'd never seen before. I also think, so the spoken word pieces are really, really, really heightened and intense. But there are other moments that just watching it from like my periphery when someone else on the plane was watching it. Like there's a moment when after that conversation, Daveed Diggs' character is walking home and he has something in his pocket and a car drives by.
Yeah.
I almost had a panic attack on the plane watching that, even though I know I know everything about this movie, but I still like, you feel it so well. And I just think it's a movie that lives in the contradiction like amazingly well. And it's just such a personal piece. I know the director, Carlos Lopez Estrada, doesn't usually get a lot of recognition because it feels so personal to Daveed Diggs and Rafael Casal. Like it's clearly a movie they've been trying to make for a long time. But I love how specific it is. I feel like if any movie is going to be a time capsule, this is it, because it's just like so many perspectives crammed into one movie.
Yeah. All right, Carson Patrick, what is your number 4 film?
The movie Flower, which is Max Winkler's follow-up to Ceremony. And this movie has Zoe Dutch in it, and Catherine Hahn, and Tim Heidecker. And it's one of the darkest comedies that I've seen in a long time. And the basic premise, I guess you could say, is that Zoe Dutch and her friends team up with her. They team up to take down this teacher that her stepbrother, or that sexually molested her stepbrother. They all team up to try and get revenge and take him down. And Adam Scott plays the teacher. And it's very dark. It's very funny, though, and it's weirdly got just a lot of heart. And it's a very twisted, but very heart-filled coming-of-age movie.
All right, so that was Carson's number 4 film, Flower. That brings us... We're into the top 3. This is our bronze film for the year. Mm-hmm. Stephen Miller, what is your number 3?
Okay, no more build-up from here on out. I'm just going to cut to the chase. My number 3 is Widows, and Widows is fucking awesome. I loved this movie. This is one of the few movies that when I left the theater, I was just on a complete high. I was pumped. I felt like I have just seen a real movie made by a director at the peak of his powers who knows exactly what he wants to convey. He had me in the palm of his hand. He can do whatever the hell he wants because I am completely on board. My main comp for this movie when we talked about it, I believe, was The Departed by Scorsese, because that is a movie that, on the one hand, is a very much like a typical adult action film, right? Like it's going to be a crime saga. There's going to be twists and turns. There's going to be violence. There's going to be hammy performances. But then it is made by an auteur who is so damn good that the movie becomes elevated above that genre into just being an amazing movie in its own right. I think Widows is exactly that. So I've talked to people who said that Steve McQueen felt like he was pulling back a little bit. he kind of felt too restrained, too moderate. The movie was too slow going, or it didn't know what it wanted to be. Like, it wasn't fully a heist movie, wasn't fully an action movie, wasn't fully a social drama. I hear all that. Like, I hear that conversation. I don't feel it. I don't care. I thought this was such a visceral, engaging movie from start to finish. I love the cast. Like, Viola Davis is incredible. Daniel Kaluuya is the best performance I think I've seen him in so far. He's such a menacing villain, so chilly. Brian Tyree Henry is right behind him as his more stoic, level-headed boss, who is like more terrifying by virtue of how in control he is of the situation. Elizabeth Debicki, I mentioned earlier in The Tale, she's awesome here too as a member of her crew. Cynthia Erivo, I haven't talked about Bad Times at the El Royale yet, but that is a movie that she was great in.
Yet?
As an honorable mention.
Okay.
All right, I'll reveal that.
Okay.
I wanted to dangle that for you a little bit. She is so great here. Colin Farrell as the politician who's like seedy, but not as seedy as he could be, who's trying to navigate these different worlds. I feel like I haven't even mentioned Liam Neeson yet. Like, that's how fucking insane this movie is that like I can go through so many people. The cast is studded. Everyone is doing their part. Everyone is playing their role incredibly well. This movie does by accident what so many movies have tried to do on purpose. It talks about politics and society. It talks about relationships. It talks about the things Steve McQueen just like seems to reveal on the sidelines of his main goal are so much more powerful than what many people have tried to do in their films on a whole. I just feel like he's operating on another wavelength. I love this movie. I was riveted from start to finish. I can't wait to watch it again. Widows, rad-ass movie. Should be on more top 10 lists. End of story.
Widows is a very good film. Widows is also a film that commits Christopher Schnese sins that make me drop it from being like really, really amazing. And that is some of the things that I think excited Steven, negatively impacted my impression of the film, just because if I'm like doing the math of where the plot is going, I can subtract away, divide away. I don't know how math works. But basically, if I divide away from both sides of the equation, I arrive at the same thing. So, once you cross out plot points, if you can have the same film without them, then why do you need them?
Sure.
That's my nebulous way of saying that so much of this film is good. And it just did. It's like
Schnese's razor just says it's too much.
Yeah, it's just like there were scenes in this film that are amazing. If I had to pick one scene, we talked about it in our review. It's a scene of it's a very, very simple scene of Colin Farrell just driving from the location where he's giving a speech to the location that he lives / works, and just like scenes like that are an example of the magic of what this film does, and
how much it can tell you without saying anything.
Yeah, and it's like those things are beautiful. Because I have this weird fucked up rubric of how I judge things. They're just, when a credits roll, if something has happened, the one little thing can make or break a film, and I think there's something that broke the film for me. I cannot fault Steven for having this on his list. I cannot fault anybody for having it on their list. I can fault people who haven't seen this film because you should see it, but it's not a list-making film for me simply because of the landing that I think it does not stick.
I hear you. The only thing that bolstered it even more, in my opinion, is that it's a weird comparison, but after watching Vice, so you and I saw an early screening of Vice, right? And there was apparently an embargo up, so nobody was talking about it for like 3 weeks after we watched that screening. My feeling was not that juicy. I thought it was fine. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. It was fine. But I feel like Widows has so much more like things to say about social and political maneuvering and cynicism in like its little offhand moments, like just its 2 or 3 seconds that it decides to show between characters than a movie like Vice had in its whole runtime. I just feel like it's such a fucking smart movie in what it wants to show. Yeah. And I really, really, really respect that. Even as I hear the plot points you're talking about, again, I just don't care.
As I said, I cannot fault you. Like I 100% agree with your access to it. I just have to be true to me.
Yeah, do it.
So being true to me, it's time to get to my number 3. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it happened. But before I get to my number 3, I want to make a statement. This statement has a lot of negative connotations nowadays.
Uh-oh.
But I will say that Steven...
I believe in states' rights.
Steven, in making his top 10 list, this entire time has been playing three-dimensional chess. Steven created his list by saying, wait, there are things I want to talk about, but I would stake the house. That's a gambling metaphor, right?
I'll agree to it.
Basically, Steven was saying, like, I am going to purposely withhold things from my list that I have a high percentage likelihood that Chris will put on his list.
Only sort of, yeah.
I mean, you've dropped hints.
Right.
And, I mean, you've said things.
There were things that could have made the list. I don't know that they would have, but they could have. And it was easier to sacrifice them knowing that you would talk about them.
Yeah. So Steven has been playing this game when I've been just like, I'm just going to put my list out there. Steven's been like...
Chris is playing tic-tac motherfucking toe.
And Steven was like, you know what? I'm gonna surface some interesting things that I want to talk about. Fucking let that guy take on these other films. Steven and I saw a lot of films at Tribeca Film Festival. A lot of them were good. I think Steven might have thought a lot more of them were good than I thought. Well, let me rephrase that. I hated some of the things we saw, and I think Steven didn't hate anything as much as I hated some of things.
You loved more things than I did, though.
Yeah, but I also hated more things than you did.
Yeah.
That's all fair to say. My number 3 is a thing that we saw early on. I think we saw it early on.
Go on.
My number 3 is the film Tully. I think Tully is a fantastic film. It is... it might be a film, given that I grew up where my youngest sisters were 12 years younger than me, and I grew up not in a parental role, but in a role where I was around and caring for younger kids than myself. The fact that I am now 35 years of age and of theoretical childbearing age...
No one has put it to the test.
I don't know a less awkward way to say that than that. This is a film that talks about what it means to give your life to creating a life and sort of the sacrifices that you go through and like the desire. One film that's not on my list that I genuinely loved this year was I'll just throw out one of my honorable mentions, which is A Simple Favor. And in that film, Anna Kendrick's character is like this quote unquote like perfect mom, right? Where she's doing all the things and like baking all the things for the thing, volunteering for all of the things at school and just being this like
super mommy.
Yeah, super mom that is not attainable. Tully is the story of not only the reality of what it takes to be that mother that you think you want to be, but the sacrifices you go through to become that person, and also the toll it takes to even attempt in your own mind to keep up the image of what you think you're supposed to be. It's a story about how we all, like, comedians talk about it. Lots of people talk about the fact that, like, everyone is scared. They're going to drop their baby.
They all want to shake the baby.
You got to sway the baby. Like, every single person fears that they're the only ones who has made mistakes raising a child. And this film deals with that in a way. And even like in the Q&A that we watched, he talked about how, like, they didn't want to just create this story that was their idea of what it's like to just their own experiences. They like pulled every single person in the crew and like all these people who are like their friends and family and like tell us all the things that you've never told anybody else. Like the in the trailer, like the dropping the baby on the phone. Like you just put the baby down. The baby's sleeping. You dropped it. When I was little, I was playing with my sister on my bed and she fell off my bed backwards.
I love the passive tense there. I was playing with her and she fell.
No. But it's a thing where it's like fuck.
I know, I have an iPhone.
No, but like there's things where you're like fuck, okay, she's okay. It's cool.
Because I'm used to work.
My sister is still alive. She's totally fine. No problems. But it's just like a thing where every single parent is worried they're going to roll over the child while they're sleeping. They're going to do something wrong. They're like, if they have trouble breastfeeding, they're like, why am I a bad mother because I'm not able to do this correctly? And on top of that, like, you deal with like the relationship between a husband and a wife, and just there is so much complexity to the life of getting older and bringing more life into the world that this film does, that it's just, it's this amazing truth and this performance that Charlize Theron does in this film. Like, I've criticized even specifically Charlize Theron in the past about like okay, like I didn't like the film Monster, and everybody like talked about like, oh, she's this beautiful woman, and like people in Monster like celebrated like the fact that she went from being like one of the most beautiful women on the planet to being a monster. Mm-hmm. It's the title of the film, not my judgment. And I always got kind of annoyed by that, because I was like, look, I appreciate Christian Bale getting fat to play Dick Cheney.
Sure.
But like, it's also like, you got fat to play Dick Cheney. Like, there has to be more than just the physical transformation. And I think that this is a whole different thing that is happening in this film. It's not just like, oh, she put on weight and she's wearing unflattering clothes and she's like crying a lot. It's like, this is a fucking woman performing a broken woman in a way that is just heart-wrenching, but still hopeful. And the places this film goes, like, I was constantly wondering and just following this film, being completely wrapped up in it. And it was like, you know, when we stack ranked our things, I put Tully at the top of the list, because it was just one of those things where I was like, this is fucking amazing film. And I might be a little biased because of the Q&A and just like the interesting things that we're saying about it. I might be biased because of my age. I might like, there's a bunch of things that like, maybe this is just a perfect Chris film, but it was just, it was an incredible journey that I was just like, the entire year, I've always returned to that and thought about Tully and just the experience that I went through. And even like, as my brain tried to grok what was happening in this film and like go to really interesting places, and where it goes, I was satisfied with it, and it just, I haven't returned to it. It's one of those films where I don't want to return to it because I don't want to change that initial viewing of it. But it was just, I thought it was incredible, and I'm really grateful that I got to see it there. And yeah, that was the film that we didn't have on the list. We had booked all of our tickets for all of Tribeca, and at the end we had to drop a film which I still haven't seen.
No, we're never gonna know what Stockholm Syndrome was like.
And I want to see it so bad. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's just one of those things where like, we almost did not see this, and it would have come out while we were gone, which means it could have been one of the many, many films this year that we didn't get to see because we were gone that weekend, or we just didn't have a chance to catch it back up on it. I'm so grateful that I got to see it, and in that environment was really amazing, and getting to experience the conversations after the film. It was an awesome film, and it gets my number 3.
Yeah, I totally agree. Contrary to your long preface, this was never really fighting for my top 10, not for 3D chess. It would have easily been in the top 20. I just like didn't know where to put it exactly. But I loved this movie. I think it's amazing. Like, I loved a lot of movies this year. Like, that's the thing that I realized. Charlize Theron, as you mentioned, gives an amazing performance. She does so much. I think this is a wonderful companion piece to Private Life, in the kind of the dark side of parenthood that is not depressing and dour by virtue of being dark. It's like kind of hopeful I don't know how to explain it. There's something about, in this movie in particular, there's a device. I'm not going to spoil it. You've done a good job of not spoiling things so far, but there's a lot in this movie that is about how good life can get if you have help. Finally, how different your life could be if only it were a little easier, if only things were tilted a little differently. And I think there's an emotional trick that does that feels so sad and happy and cathartic at the same time. I think this movie pulls that off amazingly well, and I think it's a movie that if anyone who is a parent or a prospective parent has asked me what they should watch, I tell them, like, go rent Tully, watch Tully, you're going to like it.
Yeah.
100% success rate so far. Like, people love it. It is a movie that has a great build-up. It goes places you wouldn't expect, and it would be a perfect movie without that, and it is a great movie with it still. And I think, it's a really wonderful movie, and I feel like it's kind of getting forgotten at the end of the year, and I don't know why, because I do think it's a lovely look at parenthood, and it has a lot of layers going on, and it is a very Chris movie, but in a very good way.
Are you saying there's a bad way that something can be a Chris movie?
I don't know, Buried.
Buried is a fantastic film.
I haven't seen it yet.
What? How are you going to criticize me about my stance on Buried? Speaking of criticizing me, Carson Patrick, what is your number 3?
Lee Winnell also had a movie that he wrote and directed this year, which was Upgrade, which was fucking awesome. And it's funny because this movie, I feel like, is paired up really well with Hotel Artemis, which is also on here. They came out like a week apart from each other, and they're just both like really good throwbacks in a couple of ways. Well, both is because they feel extremely aughts. Like, Upgrade totally feels like a Rogue Pictures movie that would have come out in like 2005. And Hotel Artemis definitely feels like a WWE Studios movie that would have come out in like 2006 or 7. And, both are Upgrade, obviously, is a great throwback to like really like low budge, like grungy sci-fi, like 80s sci-fi movies, like Hardware or something like that. And Hotel Artemis is a big time throwback to Carpenter.
All right, so Upgrade. This is like, I still can't believe I haven't seen Upgrade. I feel like Upgrade came out way early in the year. I assumed for sure that if I watched this,
it should have been this year's Predestination, right?
Well, I was going to say it should have been this year's Hardcore Henry, which is basically what it is, minus the first person. I still have not seen it. It has been on my list. I only 40% jokingly thought that I would maybe catch this in attempts to see if it might make my list, just because it seems right up my alley. Super insane, crazy, weird person gets weird augmentations and fights a lot of people. I did not see it, though, sadly. I still want to see Upgrade. I will pull the trigger and watch it. I hope that I love it. Stephen Miller, did you ever catch Upgrade?
I did not, but if you love it, I will watch it also. I was not even familiar with it. I don't think I remember hearing about it when it came out.
Well, as soon as we're done watching this episode, we'll pull up the trailer for Upgrade.
Then let me Upgrade.
All right, it is time to get to our silver slot for our top 10s. And not just silver because the time is getting late and we are growing old, but silver because we are up to our number 2s. Stephen Miller, what is your number 2 film of 2018?
Mm-hmm. So for my number 2, I need to do a shout out to another podcast with roughly 1,000 extra listeners that we have. The baseline for any podcast.
So they have 2 listeners?
Yeah, at least. So in the Little Gold Men podcast, then Joanna Robinson casually mentioned one time that she was heading to the Mill Valley Film Festival, which is the film festival where prospective Academy Award voters who live in the Bay Area often are given a chance to watch movies that might make the cut. And I remember listening on like a Thursday morning on the way to work and being like, holy shit, I live in the Bay Area. I could go. When is the Mill Valley Film Festival? And it was 3 days after I was listening. And I managed to score tickets to If Beale Street Could Talk and Roma on the same day. This, as Chris already knows, is about Roma, which is a movie I had heard a lot about leading up to this. Alfonso Cuarón's follow-up, obviously, to Gravity. Him being an amazing director. Children of Men, one of my favorite movies of all time. Gravity was an amazing movie the year it came out. I have to admit, have never seen Y Tu Mama Tambien. I have to watch that.
It's a good film.
I'm sure it is. I don't want to be the snob here who points to a Netflix movie and says, you have to see it in theaters. You have to see it in theaters. But you have to see Roma in theaters, if only because attention spans do not work as well in a living room as they do in theaters. And this is a movie that I don't know if I were sitting in my room with 8,000 distractions, if I would have clued in enough to get in the zone that Alfonso Cuarón is trying to put me in. In that theater, though, with a sympathetic crowd, with people who want to watch it, no distractions, it was a phenomenal film-going experience. It is beautiful. It is a black and white story of growing up in 1972, I think, in Mexico City. It's a very personal story of Alfonso Cuarón. It's about a maid who works for a kind of upper-class family living there. The maid is a thinly veiled tribute to his actual nanny who brought him up in the 70s. And it's basically a look that, like First Man, it's a movie that people saw as kind of distant and formal and cold. And I understand that. It's a movie that on the surface is showing, here she is cleaning up after the family. Here they are going out to see the movies. Here they are with the wife and husband having an argument in the living room while she stands in the background and does the dishes. But I think there's an undercurrent of this movie that is very, very, very warm and emotional. And watching it, at least in a crowded theater, I really, really felt that. It feels like it's doing so many things without saying anything. It's talking about what it feels like to live in a time and place where you are a second-class citizen, where you are not at the forefront of society, where you exist mostly to prop up other people, but the warmth that you still feel to those around you and the way that the world kind of changes without you having any say in it. It has some of the most beautiful shots of the year. There are so many things that are shot in like reflections, or there's a scene where people are at a Christmas party and a forest fire starts. And at first it's just like a little light in the distance in black and white. And slowly it grows and grows and grows until it becomes a thing that kind of encompasses the whole frame and demands your attention. This is just a movie that I have no idea how long it is. I have no idea how expansive it is. I could not in good faith tell anyone else that they will love it. All I know is the like 2.5 hours that I spent sitting in that theater being absorbed in this fake early 70s in fake Mexico City, like this thing that Alfonso Cuarón built from scratch in such a complete way that he can have like these enormous widescreen 360 shots and you just see everything as if you were living it. It blew me away. I think this is an amazing movie. It is not a message film necessarily, but it feels very, I don't know, it feels very personal. It feels like, let me give you my childhood and show you what it felt like.
Yeah.
And you can take it or leave it, right? Like you can see what you can glean from it, which has a lot to do with my first pick also, which we'll get to in a second. But I think this is a beautiful movie. It's great that Netflix distribute it because it probably would not be made if not for that. But yeah, I hate the idea that people can only catch it on Netflix too, because it's a really powerful movie-going experience, I think.
There's a great clip you can see online of Alfonso Cuarón responding to a person in the audience after it won the Golden Globe, asking like, why did you distribute this on Netflix? And he's like, who like, I'm gonna paraphrase and add some swearing, but he's like, who the fuck would have watched it if it showed in like 3 theaters around the country? Like, no one's gonna show this film.
Right.
Like, Netflix gave me a chance to show it to so many people that would have not had the chance to see it, because no studio would take a risk on a black and white film about this specific experience.
In half Spanish and half native language. I don't even know the name of it. It's like a film that there's so many things that would have been a barrier to entry to actually be in a American studio.
Yeah. And it is a film that the only reason I have not seen it is because I specifically did not want to watch it within the context of, does this make my list? Mm-hmm. I want to experience it like fresh and not in the context of trying to fit it in. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put it off. I think it might still be playing in the city right now. So I might try to catch it this week before it disappears forever. But either way, I'm going to catch it. If I have to, I'll see it on Netflix, but I'd prefer to see it in the theater. So maybe instead of editing this episode, I'll see it tomorrow.
I recommend anyone listening, if you only have Netflix as an option, take your phone, put it in the other room, turn off the lights, tell yourself, like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to feel whatever the director is telling me to feel, because it, like I get the feeling of, like, not being able to focus for that long. And this is not a movie that gives you a bit of action every 5 minutes, but there's something magical that it does, like, if you let it soak into you for a while.
Cool. All right, so it is on to my silver pick for 2018. My number 2 for the year is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, now I don't know your number 1. Holy shit.
This is a film, like, the trailer for this film, I feel came out like the beginning of the year. It was so long ago that I feel that I saw that trailer, and I was extremely excited. I was extremely excited because it just seemed like it had this energy that we haven't seen from a lot of other superhero films, and it just had the style, and I was like, this is going to be rad no matter what it turns out to be. I was not prepared for the film that it turned out to be. That style is there. It looks fucking amazing. I just rewatched it this weekend again as I was preparing for the list. I may have, after rewatching it, bumped it above Tully.
Nice.
It is fucking phenomenal. It is an amazing work of art. It is an achievement in fucking whatever technical marvel they did to pull off this sort of, like, just the look of it, the painterly look of it, and, like, the crazy shifting. Also amazing in 3D. I saw it in 2D, and while I was watching it, I was like, well, they're already doing some sort of, like, desaturation on the background. I can see how it might work in 3D, but I assumed it would be sort of like a 2.5D sort of thing when I saw it. It looks amazing in real D, which is what I saw it in. But the story in this is so fucking good. I know that you saw it late, and I know that you saw it within the context of so many people praising it, and I can only assume, knowing Stephen that I know, that the praise for it may have lessened your excitement for the film. It may have not. I don't know. But it is a film that offers so much change for who we see Spider-Man as. I mean, like, the idea that anybody can wear the mask is a great idea, but seeing it presented in this way of really anybody can be Spider-Man is an amazing thing. Miles Morales is a fucking awesome character.
Yeah.
The way this film portrays who he is as the young man that he is, and how that transfers into how he joins the Spider team, and who the people that he befriends is amazing. In my brain, I enjoyed the conception of, like, the multiverse and bringing all these weird spider people together, but the way it actually handles it is brilliant. I love old man Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Peter B. Parker. Like, just this late 30s, pudgy, broken Spider-Man, and how he interacts with the other spider people. This film is doing so much, and it's so amazing. The story is great. The acting in it, or I guess the voice acting in it, is great. The animation is great. Everything about this film is so spectacular that it's just like every ounce of it is just so enjoyable, so amazing, way deeper than it needed to be as successful as it is. And I'm really sad that it got dropped in December against all these films that are trying to compete for the holiday season. Like, I feel like it is not doing as well as it should. I think it's done roughly 30 million domestic, 30 million worldwide, something around that. And I think this film should be crushing Aquaman.
Yeah.
I think this film should be crushing all the other films. I have, like, when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, I praised the villain. I praised Tom Holland. I mean, he shortly appeared in Civil Bro. But I have thought Tom Holland was an amazing Spider-Man. I was so happy that Sony gave in and let Marvel have some of Spider-Man to include him in the Avengers, because I love Tom Holland. And I have sort of been of this mind. It's like, Sony, give up the property.
Yeah, you don't know what to do with it.
Let it go. Just let it be part of the Avengers and Marvel again. You don't need it. And even though this film seemed very stylized and fun, it didn't feel, before it came out, like it was like, Sony, just, we get it. You need to keep making Spider-Man so that you can continue to own your part of the rights, otherwise the rights revert to Marvel. This film proves that they should just have it and do their thing, because they have made an amazing fucking film that is so good.
Yeah.
It is so good. And I love this film. I love this character. I love all of the characters in the film. John Mulaney as Spider-Pig is amazing.
Yeah.
Spider-Ham.
Yeah, Spider-Ham.
Yeah.
Nick Cage showing up as Spider-Man Noir.
There's just so much of this film that's so good, and it's so, like, seeing it again, I don't even, it didn't have room to get better, but if there was room, it would have grown. Like, it felt, I'm trying hard not to use amazing, because I know Amazing Spider-Man is it's just a phenomenal film.
Yep.
And it's amazing. Steven joked, I replaced my Facebook header with a shot of him falling into the city upside down, and Steven commented that, like, oh, well, obviously fucking this is, like, too much praise for Chris to change.
I thought it'd be your number one. Now I know you're number one, but I still am surprised. I thought this would be it.
Do you know my number one, Steven? We'll you?
I will say I loved this movie. This was one that I agonized over whether or not it would make the top 10. I was fighting for it. I knew with such certainty this was 3D chess. I knew you would have it on. So I was kind of like, I didn't feel as bad if it couldn't make the cut in the end. It's great. Like, the use of animation is innovative. I only saw it once in 2D. I would love to revisit it in 3D.
It's still playing in 3D.
I can imagine that it is, like, very different in 3D too. Like
AMC Stubbs A-list.
All
I'm
right.
just saying.
I'm ready for it. I think the way it broadens the Spider-Man universe, the way it brings in the comic book aesthetic to the movie format, I'm sure we've said this before, but I think this is the most comic book any movie has ever been.
This entire year, I have not laughed as much as the cemetery scene in this film. I had tears in my eyes the second time around, knowing all the things. Having seen it already, I took off my 3D glasses and had to, like, spend, like, a minute and a half wiping the tears out of my eyes. And that's the thing too, is because it's animated, it does something that no live action film will ever be able to do, which is communicate that level of physical humor.
Yeah.
And Carson has complained about, like, the over seriousness of the Marvel films. I have celebrated some of that, because there are some things related to the Tony Stark arc that I think are really deeply, I've spent 10 years of my life, like, caring about these characters, and I care about that. Carson has complained a little bit about that. This film can do things that those films will never even attempt to do.
It's the power of animation.
Because it's animation, yeah.
And it really, really, really nails it. I agree. I think this blows Spider-Man Homecoming out of the dust, and I loved Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
I think that was great. I love Jake Johnson as the old Spider-Man.
So good.
Really good, and a good riff on it, again, because it is broadening the Spider-Man universe, where it's like we can be about aging and existential angst and all these other things, right? And, like, it really opens it up. I think Kingpin, sorry.
Kingman.
Yeah, the golden circle.
He did have a suit.
Yeah, I think Kingpin is an amazing villain who could only be realized in cartoon form. And I think
he's he's in other properties that are currently involve live action, which are played by an actor that Carson has celebrated on this podcast.
But it is so much better in this cartoonish, heightened reality.
So amazing.
Definitely. The only thing that kept it off my list, even given the 3D chess, was there's something, I felt it with Lego Movie. I still feel it, which is that Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they're like, if my comedy wavelength is at like 1.7, they're at like 2.1. They're like a little more heightened than I am. And things go by a little bit faster than I process them. And for all the things I loved about Spider-Man, there was something about the humor and joy of it that was like a little bit quicker than I am when I've had a whiskey flight and then gone to see a theater.
Nice.
I need to watch it a second time to really feel it. But I felt it with a lot of their movies so far, where they're at another wavelength, and I'm not quite there. Like I'm really close, but not quite.
They're like I would definitely say like I'll try to catch Roma this week. You try to catch.
Yeah, you turn your wavelength way down, and I'll turn mine way up.
But yeah, I'll remove all color and 3-dimensionality, and you add color and 3-dimensionality. But no, see it in 3D. I mean, there's just a shot of Kingpin's face that takes up the whole screen. And the depth between his nose and his shoulders
made you cry.
It makes him extremely intimidating. And also the movie makes me want a bagel.
Yeah. Deal.
All right. So now that we spent enough time gushing about this film, Carson Patrick, what is your number 2?
If I had to pick a number 2, I would definitely give it to Vox Lux, which is a lot of great stuff coming out at the end of the year. You know, usually like the year before I was like, I'm done in October, and, you know, you pretty much call it. But there was just so much stuff where they're like, oh, wait, you know, there was some end of the year stuff that was really strong, and Vox Lux was one of them, which I think it's a near perfect movie. I'm just going to say that, especially the last like 20 to 25 minutes, I think is pretty much perfection, where we get Natalie Portman in a full-blown concert pretty much. But the entire movie, I was just like, oh man, this is so fucked up, and I love it.
Vox Lux. I fucking hate this movie. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna even go out on a limb and say that Carson knows, without even me saying anything, that I did dislike this film. And by dislike, I mean fucking hate.
Even though Lox Vox is your favorite bagel, and we've already established how much bagels mean to you.
Oh, Steven. I appreciate that joke. But yes, this is a film that I was excited to see. I almost saw at the Mill Valley Film Festival, a film festival that we've mentioned earlier on this episode. I missed it, decided not to see it. Caught it at an Alamo screening with the producer and the director, maybe?
Natalie something?
No, Natalie was not there, unfortunately. But I saw this film, and I mean, I think it's an irresponsible film. I think the choice to use some of the imagery that it does with no benefit, I think to the story is potentially disrespectful.
I am intrigued now.
If you open your film with a school shooting, number of terrorist shots later in the film, like they're 9/11 imagery.
It broke the Sicario 2 principle.
Literally, I'm just gonna paraphrase what the director said in the Q&A. He said, "If I look back on my life, it is defined by a few events. Columbine, 9/11, I forget the other one. So I decided to make a movie about that." This is the party's just beginning. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is exactly how I felt about that film, except for rather than pick one subject matter that I felt uncomfortable about the writer-director's decision to tell a story about surrounding that thing, he chose 4 different things and set his story around a pop star who's birthed out of several different tragedies throughout her life. And I don't appreciate that choice. And I think that this film does a lot of weird things and evokes imagery that it does nothing with. And I am slightly insulted and disapprove of the decision to make the film at all.
Wow.
I love Natalie Portman. She acts the shit out of this film. I think it's a bad film, and I think it was a bad decision to make.
Wow.
Like,
see, I knew people like were having mixed opinions on this movie. I had no idea it was like for such specific reasons.
No, it's very, very, very specific. Like, I wanted to leave, but because the director was there, not out of respect for him, I wanted to hear him justify the decisions he made, and I was not satisfied with the decisions that were made.
So I'm definitely going to watch this movie now. I have to weigh in on this.
Also, he's probably never going to listen to this. Little bit of a dick. Somebody in the audience asked the following question. So this is a film about a pop star. They said,
Is it true that you never stopping?
Nice. No, but somebody in the audience asked the following question. They said, given that this is a story about a pop star and surrounds her making of music and blah, 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 very little of the soundtrack is her pop music. Is there a reason behind that decision to make? His response was, where else would you choose to put pop music? And then when it was dead silent for about 30 seconds, he said, I mean, 30 minutes out of the 2.5 hours of this fucking movie, I don't know how long it actually is, but it felt extremely long. 30 minutes of it is pop music. 30 minutes of it is other soundtrack. The rest of it is silent. I think it's a good balance.
He sounds like a real heartwarmer.
Yeah,
Like Taylor Sheridan.
There was so much of, like, nothing about my experience of watching this film or sitting through the Q&A had me excited. And I'm very, very sorry if you are listening, director, writer, person, and producer. But I did not experience this film the way you intended me to experience it. And I don't know whose fault that is. Let's call it 50-50.
Great movie, by the way.
50-50 is a great fucking film. Those are number twos.
So my number one is a movie I believe I experienced exactly as the director intended me to. It also featured a Q&A. Christopher Schnese already knows it. You can reveal it if you want to. Or not. You don't know it.
I don't.
You don't know the number one? My number one is a little film called 8th Grade.
Oh yeah, duh. I knew that.
Yeah.
I'm so distraught by my recounting of my experience in Vox Lux that I could not remember, but I knew it was 8th grade.
This is a movie, Chris already has said many of the good things about it. It does not deserve to be as good as it is. Certainly not by a first-time director, by a comedian who became famous from Vine videos, who then became a stand-up and then became a director. How the fuck can you be so good at so many different things? It is not fair. This is a movie about growing up that takes it seriously. I think that's what I love about this movie. This is a movie that says, like, I hear you. I see what is hard about being 13. I want to make a movie about that. I want to take you seriously. I want to understand what is difficult, and I want to represent that on screen. This is a movie that can make a pool scene, like a pool party, feel like a disaster, feel like a terrifying, terrifying experience.
Steven, anytime I get in the pool, it's a disaster.
I know. This is a movie that can make getting a phone call from a girl who is probably like a sophomore in high school feel like the most amazing thing in the world, like uplift you, just make you feel so excited. It has the best, most feel-good, cry your eyes out, father-child conversation of any movie I've seen in a while, and that includes Call Me By Your Name, which I loved. This is just a movie about growing up, and I know that is well-trodden territory, but I think there's something about the way this movie takes the 8th grade experience at face value and doesn't patronize it. It doesn't try to make it too cute or too dumb. It just says, like, here is what it is, and we're going to have a little bit at the periphery about social media and how that modifies it. We're going to have little things from the future where we're looking back, feeling nostalgic, but for the most part, we are just going to hear you. We're going to hear what terrifies you, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and we are going to feel everything you feel. And I think if there's a Steven movie, like, this is fucking it. I knew from the moment we saw this movie that this was going to be at least in the running for my favorite film of the year, and it delivered. I don't know. I empathize so much, even though I am of a different generation. You know, I'm of a different age group than Kayla. I just feel that pain and that awkwardness. I think there's something very universal about this movie, something that it's just such a well done movie. I don't know what to say that hasn't been said already, but I love this movie. I think anyone should find something to love in it. I think people of our age definitely could. I think people of her generation would see things to relate to. I just think it's beautiful and it feels good to love, and I love rooting for it. I don't care that Elsie Fisher was happy that Bohemian Rhapsody won the Golden Globes. Go for it, Elsie. You be you. You know, you root for what you want to root for. I love this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was on my list. It is a fantastic film, and I think that we threw out all these caveats earlier in the episode about how these are our favorite films, not necessarily the best films. I think Eighth Grade is one of the best films of the year, and that is I'll fight anybody who disagrees. No, I mean I stand behind that statement. I think that it's just true. It's really a fantastic film. Due to other things, it doesn't make the number one slot for me, but it's an amazing film, and I can't argue with that at all.
Yeah. I think when it came out, I was kind of the mindset of like, my favorite film of the year is going to be more serious, quote. It's going to be like tackling broader themes. It's going to be more dark. I don't know. That's kind of my general trend. And I kind of scoffed off the idea that like when awards season came around, I would be rooting for this over other things. But the year has come and gone, and like, God damn it, I want this to win something. Like, yeah. I feel like it isn't only the like hard on your sleeve indie. There's lots of things in my honorable mentions that is going to fill that category. I think this does something more, and I think it's just so like, it is exactly what Bo Burnham wanted it to be, and I think it's just a complete story, and it accomplishes everything it set out to do, and I think it's very rare for a movie to do that in a tight, coherent package. So I do think it's worth celebrating beyond just the hard-on-your-sleeve, touchy-feely Steven stuff.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was fantastic, and it was also one of the things where, like, I had a second nitpick about the film, but that's... I do enjoy our long walk home with me getting an argument with you and Joanna about a certain part of the film, and then me getting in the same argument with my girlfriend about the film after she sees it.
Did she love it?
Yeah.
Thank God.
No, I mean, I loved it too. It just that one little nitpick. It was funny to me. Clearly, I was wrong. But yeah, it's a great film, and I think even watching the film, there was like a tiny thing that made me uncomfortable about the fact that this like older white male was making this story about a young 13-year-old girl, and during the Q&A, like he had what I thought was a great response, which was like, I wanted to make this film about this age group, and I spent like all this time watching these videos online, and all of the boys' videos on YouTube and etc. were talking about Minecraft and like bullshit, and all of the girls were talking about their feelings and things that actually mattered. And I realized that like I need to tell this story because like I felt more comfortable listening to him kind of justify things himself than I did with like a little bit of the back of my mind where I was thinking of like, why are you telling this specific story? And yeah, like he nailed the story. Part of me was like, is he allowed to nail this story? And I was like, no, it's cool. I'm happy with the results.
Yeah, I think he does it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so now we're on to my number one. You said you did or didn't know it.
I don't know anymore because you expressed shock that I would know it. So now I'm questioning what I know. I believe, if I'm right, it's an overlap movie.
But that could be so many. That could be 9 other things.
Okay, I'm just going to say my guess. You can do what you want with it. I know you loved First Man, so I'm going to throw it out there as your potential number one.
It's a potential number one. I think when we reviewed the film that is my number one, I made something that is approximately the following statement. Quote, approximately, "This may be reductive, but I think this might be the Dunkirk of this year."
Ooh.
And I believe I said that. I've definitely said that out loud. I'm pretty sure I said it on the air, and I'm pretty sure I said it about the film First Man. First Man is a fucking incredible film. it is much like Dunkirk. It is a very experiential film, and it is a film that is less about the overall story and more about the experience of how somebody sees the path that they are on and what they're doing and the effort they're putting into the goal. I was amazed by the presentation of this film, the way it made you feel like you were in the experience, the way it made you feel the desire to accomplish this goal of going to the moon, the way it made you feel how much of a sacrifice it is to do something that is stupid. It's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason we should have been trying. Like, we were going to the moon because of some misguided, like, the Russians are doing spacewalks and putting 4 fucking satellites in space, and, like, they're beating us to all these goals. Why don't we pick the furthest possible goal that they don't even think is possible and go do that? Why don't we waste resources? Why don't we do this thing? Why don't we kill men in the pursuit of this goal that is
to get to a white rock
theoretically
in the
for
middle of nowhere.
nothing? Yeah, it's there is nothing we theoretically actually gained from going to the moon other than the fact that we did it, and it was nearly impossible to do, and we made that happen. And this film makes you feel the sacrifice. It makes you feel the experience. This film opens with a man in a rickety ass fucking glider with a rocket taped to the back of it, almost bouncing off the atmosphere into certain death for no reason. No reason other than to get to this artificial goal that we have set for ourselves, which is to go to the moon, land there. And I think that this film shows the pursuit and juxtaposes it to one man's life experience and his sort of disassociation from his family and emotion altogether, maybe, and just kind of couches this one journey through one man. I mean, we talked about, maybe I brought this up in the episode, but like the Jobs film,
right.
not the Ashton Kutcher one, but the Fassbender one. Mm-hmm. Danny Boyle's Jobs film is all about, like, what if I reduce this man down to these 3 moments in time? Yeah, through conversations. And this is a film of, what if I reduce this one man down to just this single drive, which is to escape the grief, the struggles of family life, and reduce everything to this one goal, which is like, maybe if I can just get to and accomplish this goal of arriving on the moon, that I can release this tension that is everything I've experienced my entire life. And I think it's such an amazing experience, and something that, like, if you didn't see it in theaters, you will never experience it the correct way. Like, I'll just say that. Like, I don't.
The IMAX in particular is very, very, very specific to what the movie does.
Yeah, and it's there. This film ends with a gut punch. This film has so many moments that are just terrifying, and like I've talked in this film, even when we review silly films like Life, I've talked about how, like, space is terrifying. It's just cold, lack of oxygen, nothingness, and any film that deals with us going there is inherently scary. And this film is like, what if we were going there, but we didn't have any technology? We had, like, a calculator and a piece of paper, and you had to figure out how to not die. And I think that this film just does something amazing in the way it presents this reality and this one man. And you may not agree with his motivations. You may not agree with the way he treats his family, his disconnection from others, the way he treats his supposed friends. Like, he's not put on a pedestal. He's not this hero. He's this person who was driven to do a thing because. And I think that it's an amazing film. And of all the things I've seen all year, this is the one thing that I saw, and I was like, that was a thing that I cannot unlive. That was amazing. I'm really excited to listen to the audiobook of the right stuff. There's the book all about, like, the men who, like, made that mission possible. It has some title like that. But I'm excited to listen to that. Everything about this film I thought was just this amazing ride, and I didn't have that other emotional tickle from any other film this year that would have put anything above it. And it was just one of those things where, like, when I was making my list, I was like, First Man, number 1, Body, number 10. Spider-Man is going somewhere in that top 5.
Yeah.
And
he's swinging.
Tully has to be up there somewhere because that shit floored me. And it was just a thing where I was like, this, like, nothing can compete with the experience I had watching First Man. Rewatched it last night just to make sure I wasn't insane. Still holds up, even on a little tiny laptop screen, which was all that was available to me at the time. But it's a fantastic film, and I'm so happy that it came out. I'm slightly scared for Oscar season.
Oh, it's not going to get shit, but it is amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it not getting anything. For the record, I'm just very worried about the potential, what it's going up against, and really fucked up shit happening again.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had it on my list. Obviously, I think it's an amazing movie. I think Damien Chazelle does a almost impossible task, which is he manages to glorify this thing that felt really important to a lot of people. Like, anyone who was alive in that time, they reference this as their calibration point of what humanity can do, what society can do when they move together. We put a man on the moon, you know, we put a man on the moon, and the meaning of that sentence is really hard to convey to our generation who have not lived through any kind of moon landing, right? As far as I know, any really NASA activity at all.
China just landed on, like, the dark side of the moon, right? With a automated probe.
Yeah, and played the Wizard of Oz when they landed there. See what would happen. But this movie really conveys it does something where it shows a triumph without putting a halo on it. Like it doesn't show it in a overly glorified light. It doesn't do the Ron Howard thing. It doesn't do the kind of like, look at the majesty of this accomplishment. It just says, look at how fucking crazy this is, you know? And this is a thing Damien Chazelle has been interested in forever, right? Whiplash is kind of like this too. Like, Whiplash ends in a scene that makes you see, like, wow, people pursuing something to the most extreme degree possible is inspiring and terrifying and cathartic in a very strange way.
Yeah.
And I think this movie is all about that space. I completely agree. I think it's a amazing movie. I think it is kind of getting shafted by critics who are, I don't even know what they're getting caught up on necessarily, because I think this movie is doing something that other movies have not tried to do this year.
Everyone that I've heard talk about it praises it. They're just not listing it anywhere. And I think that, like, it's like, as you're saying, like, we today, living now, we have fucking rockets that go up, fall back to Earth, and then land autonomously on floating barges in the ocean. Mm-hmm. They had a calculator and a piece of paper and radio waves.
Yeah.
And like we can't appreciate how inconceivable it was that this mission actually was a fucking success. Yeah.
They had Taraji P. Henson basically like doing math on a piece of paper, saying like, "This is where you're gonna land. Good luck."
It's crazy to me that, like, we take for granted so much of this, and I think that this film puts that in perspective. I mean, sure, you have Apollo 13, and you have like the scene where they're like, "Oh, we got to take these 10 parts and like make a rebreather out of it," and you're like, "Cool, I get the tension of that. They're gonna starve of oxygen deprivation, right?"
It's tension in like a. Nope, I don't got it.
Yeah. But I think that, like, much like Gravity, which was top 5 list the year that came out, like, it's a thing where it just puts in perspective how helpless you are. This isn't like there are aliens coming to get you and that's why you're helpless. This is like, you're just there, and best case scenario, if we wanted to send help, it would be like a month before we can send a rocket up, right? Mm-hmm. We gotta like get the resources together, build the thing. We gotta wait for the weather to be just right, and then we send something up. Like there's like even the scene in First Man where like like, we all know that he makes it to the moon and makes it back because that's history. But like the scene where they're reading the letter that they will read to the American people if the mission fails is heart-wrenching. Like you're just like, you know, they're going to, watching it a second time, I got emotional. Just the idea of the presenting this information to the people about how these people who journeyed to the moon, like the moon will be their final resting place, and like blah 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 blah. Like I totally don't remember the actual message, but like it's incredible what the achievement is, and not in a fucking Go America way, just in a that mankind as anything in the history of the universe was able to build a missile and throw people into space and have them return alive.
Was able to and wanted to. Right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's kind of the amazing aspect of it all, is that like we have this drive to do that.
Yeah. Like it's an incredible film about an incredible achievement of humans as a species on this planet. Like it's harrowing, and not in like a jingoistic way. It's just like
I also would very much push back on people who think it like is not an emotional story. I think the emotions are there like right below the surface. Like Ryan Gosling is this buffer between you and the emotional core of the movie, but it is like waiting to erupt. And I feel like you just feel it through every frame of this movie. I think there's a lot there about the fear and the little like Jenga block tower that is like the masculine experience, and the stoic, like, I'm going to do it for my country experience. And right below that, you feel like anything could happen right now.
Yeah. I mean, like, as I said, we know through history that they make it back.
Yeah.
There's a mission in the middle of the film, which is when they're testing different components of the launch, and something bad is happening. We know they make it because they haven't even flown to the moon yet.
Yeah.
So we definitely know they survive. And NASA decides to cut a radio feed to the wife. And her panic made me tear up.
Yeah.
I know that she's going to go have the "you're a bunch of boys," whatever speech. But just her reaction to, why did this go dead? Who turned it off? I need to go yell at somebody. Her reaction to that felt so real. The danger of that situation felt real. I know that they're going to make it, because this is not even the Apollo mission. Yeah. This is the Gemini whatever mission. Like it just works always because it's real. And even like the knowing that, like, I talked about this in the original review that we did of this, but just the fact that like all of the people in the program get put on this one block. So if anybody at any point doesn't make it on any mission whatsoever, the wife and kids of that astronaut live next door to you. It's not like on the other side of the Bay Area, there's some person who died and I knew the guy and I feel sad, but I don't know the family. It's like you have dinner every night and you hang out because those are the only people you can hang out with, because that's your block on the military base or whatever. And
it's like this unique twist on the army wife idea, right? This very specific family devoted to this crazy, crazy thing that could just lose your husband in a minute.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I agree. I knew it was going to be your number one. I'm glad I wasn't wrong. You had me worried for a second.
You know what wasn't my number one, Steven?
So, number one was definitely Aquaman, and I could have just listed that 25 times and called it a day. But that would probably... whatever. Anyway, I already know this is going to go off the rails. But Aquaman, I mean, can we just get James Wan to direct everything? I mean, I was excited to see Aquaman, and I went in thinking like this is going to be fun. But man, I was not ready for it. I just was not. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just not ready for for that. the movie being at a 10 the entire time. It's a movie. A movie that, for the first time in a while, where I just sat there the entire time and was like, how the fuck did they do that? Like, there's so much going on, in each frame of this movie. Like, there's so much to take in, like so many little cool details to all these different worlds that they've created. It reminded me a lot of Valerian, and how there was just like so much to see in that. And I never thought it would be possible, but this makes Valerian look over the top. Like, Valerian looks like a fucking boring European drama compared to Aquaman. Like, Aquaman is just in a whole different league, and it looks so good. Like, I mean, there's all these different things, obviously, like, you know, a lot of times they're underwater, and, like, their hair is moving, and they have to CGI the hair to make it look like it's floating, you know, underwater and stuff. And, like, all, you know, stuff like that was just, you know, that was making me go, like, this is just crazy. And just, like, all the action scenes, of course, assembled together. It just, everything looked like it cost about $200 million, like, every frame. Like, I was just, it just looks so crazy expensive. And James Wan, you know, like, again, I should have known going in, but that opening sequence where we get Nicole Kidman fighting off those like underwater stormtrooper looking dudes, you know, I'm just like, holy shit! Like that was just the way that fight scene was shot too was very much like the Statham Rock fight in Furious 7, and it's just. And then the movie just never lets up from there. It's just one giant, awesome set piece after another. And I think my favorite was the rooftop chase, which feels very much like, to me, it felt like a live action version of the bike chase, the motorbike chase in Tintin. But man, there's just so much going on. Like, James Wan and everyone in the cast is having a blast. Like, he's letting his imagination and creativity just run wild, and we're just getting so much cool stuff. It's like this movie is like every genre. Like, it's just got everything in it. And when you think it's like there's nothing left to be in it, you know, then they were like, all right, now we're in the center of the world and there's fucking giant dinosaurs and diamonds, and it's just like, it's, you know, it's nonstop. But I think my favorite part of that rooftop chase is at the end when Amber Heard jumps off of a building, crashes through the roof of like a wine store, and then uses the wine to kill the bad guys. Like, that was just like, that felt very much like James Wan going, like, you know, it'd be cool if she killed this guy with the wine. Like, that seems like he was just, like I say, he's letting his imagination just run wild. And it was such a blast to watch. So Aquaman is for sure my number one.
No, it's funny so Carson sent us his list of his top, and it literally said 1 period Aquaman, and then just an alphabetical list below that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I listened to the beginning of the audio that I heard that he's like, yeah, the rest is just can be whatever. But Aquaman's my number one, and I think reading the list, I was like, hey, that's on brand for Carson because most people do not like Aquaman, and I can see him being excited for it. But I mean, listening to Carson's justification for it, I don't think it's just completely contrarian. Like, I totally buy all the things that he loved in that film. And it totally 100% makes sense why this is his favorite film. I think when I saw the trailer for Aquaman, I was exactly where he is now.
Me too. Yeah. I felt that also.
And I was like, this is going to, like, DC's back, baby. Yeah. Like, I was really excited for where we were going to go after having had so many missteps. I mean, admittedly, Carson doesn't think there are as much missteps as I do, but I was very, very excited for where we were going with Aquaman. And I think the execution of Aquaman, everything he is praising is there. There are fun things, there are cool things, there are great ideas, there are interesting visual feasts within the film. I just think that the film is overly long, and I just have many issues with the enjoyability of it as a whole. I think that I've joked with you about how in our review of Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald, we talked about how like this is not a whole movie. This is like part one of like 3 films.
Yeah.
Aquaman is what happens if all 3 of those films were one film.
Yep.
Because the villain is exactly Grindelwald. He has the exact same motivations. He has the same fear, except for rather than mages and no mages, is it mages? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Okay. Mages and no mages. It's surface dwellers and subsurface dwellers. And this is what happens if the guy does the big circle fire thing and then also rallies the troops and then also has the war and also has a backstory.
It's a lot.
And also has a pre-backstory that results in his birth. And I think that this film is so long and I lose patience.
Yeah. No, I was prepared to have a lot of fun with this movie. I mean, one evolution over the last few years of the podcast is I've started to enjoy dumb genre movies more. Not just dumb, like that's a value statement or whatever, but just like movies that bask in the muchness of it, like deciding like we are just going to do everything and you are going to be along for the ride. I was ready for that for Aquaman. I was so excited given the hype that people were giving it of like being a ridiculous, crazy DC universe joyride. And I gotta say, I was bored. I felt like it was so long. There were so many things going on. I couldn't get a handle on it. I did not track with the CG of the movie at all. It felt very unreal in like a Power Rangers way and not necessarily in like a fun comic book way. There was something about it that I was not tracking at all. I get that this is James Wan doing the James Wan thing times infinity. Like, I understand that, but
Yeah.
something did not land for me the way that it landed for not just Carson. Matt Patch has loved this movie too. Like, there are people who love this movie for legitimate reasons, but I was not among them. I wanted it to be over before it was over.
Yeah. Well, that is our top 10 list for the year. As we stated at the beginning of this episode, creating a top 10 is difficult. There are a lot of films that we have to leave off the list. So why don't we take a moment to kind of discuss some of the things that didn't make our list that we want to have, like an honorable mention for, and just kind of talk about liking so that maybe people can check it out.
Yeah.
Steven?
Oh, God, there's so many. At the top, the way I defined it, I already left off Minding the Gap and The Rider because I didn't want to have to find a way to fit those in. Both of those movies I totally loved. Almost definitely would make a written top 20 list or whatever. Other things that were on my list as recently as like 6 hours ago. Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Thought that movie was awesome and kind of criminally overlooked too because of the Netflix thing. Support the Girls. I thought that was a great lighthearted movie. It wasn't mumblecore, but it had some of the like things that made mumblecore so great. Thoroughbreds, I really wanted to praise that movie because I loved it, and I feel like people have all forgotten that it came out this year.
That might have been one of the ones when I was making my list that I totally forgot.
I thought it.
Oh no, it's on there.
I thought it might have been one of your forgotten ones. That was my number 10 until like 4 hours ago.
Nice.
We started recording 4 hours ago until like 6 hours ago. In that vein, American Animals, another movie that is close enough to documentary. It's like blurring the line between fact and fiction. That was just a great movie that built intensity really well. Mission Impossible Fallout, like you mentioned, Leave No Trace was a great Steven movie this year, I thought. Bad Times at the El Royale, I really enjoyed this movie. I wanted to praise that more. Other stuff I really, 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 really like. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, we talked about. Black Panther, Sorry to Bother You, If Beale Street Could Talk. Skate Kitchen, and mid-90s, 2 other wonderful skate movies of the year. Thunder Road, Game Night, Blockers, Death of Stalin, Madeline's Madeline. There are a bunch of Cannes movies I didn't add because it felt like nobody got to see them, so it'd be too douchey to do it. But Dogman, Wild Pear Tree, Under the Silver Lake, those are all really good movies that are coming out. I Love Dogs, You Were Never Really Here, Won't You Be My Neighbor, The Kindergarten Teacher. That was a...
I don't even know what that is.
That is Maggie Gyllenhaal in a Netflix movie as a woman who gets obsessed over this kindergartner who she thinks is a genius, and she becomes eerily overprotective of him and his strength in a way that is very interesting. It's a remake of an Israeli movie.
Huh.
Lot of good things. A Star Is Born I really liked. Like it wasn't going to make this list, but I thought it was a great movie that did what it wanted to do very well. Too many things to talk about. Paddington 2 I loved also. Like I know David Ehrlich is waving the flag on that more than anybody else, but what a charming fucking movie to watch on an airplane.
I've still seen neither of the Paddington films. I thought about potentially trying to see it when making my list. And I was like, no, because I'll have to watch both of them, and that will give it unfair advantage to making a list against other films.
It is a lovely, lovely, lovely movie. And then there are movies that I think I need to watch a second time. They deserve a second chance.
Aquaman.
Burning. The Favorite is a movie that I quite liked, but I didn't get what everyone was so hyped about. Like, this made a lot of number ones this year. A lot of people were really into it. I just thought it was Yorgos tempering down his style a little bit in a way that was nice, but nothing too crazy. And First Reformed is a movie that has, like, my name written all over it. I was just fine with it when I saw it.
So I will say this about Burning, which I have unfortunately not been able to see yet. Mm-hmm. But coming out of Cannes, there were two films that were both in conversations. Both of them came out here in the city around the same time, and that was Burning and Shoplifters. And I feel that, like, I mean, obviously Shoplifters got the award at Cannes.
Burning was the more well-reviewed one, though.
I feel like you very much underplayed Burning. Like, all you said to me was, like, you liked it. The trailer sells a different film than it is, and every conversation I've heard about Burning makes me think I should have watched Burning instead of Shoplifters.
Probably. Yeah, probably. That's like, true. There's more of a mystery and more of the, like, guy and girl drama in Burning, definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Burning. As soon as it's available for streaming, I'm going to rent it.
Yeah, my hang-ups about Murakami were too strong.
Yeah, so for me, not even trying to, like, go off the cuff of things I want to, just looking at my spreadsheet, I talked about how I made the list of, first I gave everything a 1, then I switched everything to a 0, 1, and a 2, blah, blah, blah. If I go back to my list, all the zeros are things that made the top 10. There was a single 1 before I reached the 2s, and I didn't plan this, I'm just looking at my spreadsheet. The single 1 on the list is Beautiful Boy, which is a film that I really, really loved. I think it is an amazing version of that story. Lots of films try to tell that story. I still haven't seen Ben is Back with Lucas Hedges and Julia Roberts. Feels like a very, very, very similar story, but I just think that the way that Beautiful Boy handled that story from both sides and sort of made you live through the experience of not just watching the person with the problem and trying to follow them and feel sympathy towards them, but seeing how that person affects the family from the family's point of view instead of always being their experience of disappointing the family. I just thought it was handled in a really, really interesting way, and I thought it was a beautiful film. If I go down to the next tier of things that were in contention, things like All About Nina, which I really, really loved.
I thought that would maybe make your list, actually.
It was potentially up there. It was a film that I really, really loved, and I had a great time with. Overlord, which we jokingly talked about being in my top 10. It was not able to make my top 10, but it is so, like, it so checks all. It's one of those films where it's like there's nothing wrong with it. Mm-hmm. It's great. It just doesn't excel. But I was so amazed by what Overlord turned out to be that was like it was never truly in contention for a top 10, but it was like in the range of putting things like Searching in there. It was honestly like I could have swapped it in, but it's just those things had a novelty that Overlord didn't have. But I thought Overlord was great. I'm still going to go back for Duck Butter. I really, really loved Duck Butter. Maybe a bunch of things wrong with me, but I thought that was a beautiful story from people that I'm very, very happy to be involved in it. On all sides.
I kind of thought Elephant and the Butterfly was going to make your list.
So that one, that's still, like, I'll go back to what I said in that review. I want that to win awards. I want her to get money to make more films. She made such a beautiful film. It's a thing that I want to go back and rewatch, and I think that maybe if I rewatched it, it could have been in my list. It's one of the, if I had to choose not what was my best experience, but the thing I want to win from Tribeca, it's Elephant and the Butterfly. It's the most, it's the person I'm rooting for, the film that I'm rooting for the most, not necessarily the thing that carried me the most. And it's such a beautiful concept and idea and performances from all of the characters, especially the little girl. It's such a touching, interesting film. I want to love it even more than I do already love it. But yeah, so Elephant and the Butterfly is definitely there as a happy one. You already mentioned American Animals. Obviously, Alex Strangelove, and what was the other one?
Happy Anniversary?
No. Similar subject matter to Alex
Love, Simon.
Love, Simon.
Yeah.
Those are two films that I just had an amazing time with, that I thought were extremely heartwarming, really amazing. Black Panther, great. Avengers Infinity War, I really loved. A Simple Favor, which I teased earlier in the episode, really, really great. And Stay Like Sleep, you already mentioned, amazing. Let's see, any last things? Ballad of Buster Scruggs, you already said. Mid-90s is the last one. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of hate from different
More
places.
than I would have expected. I think it's just because Jonah Hill is like, he's pretentious enough and famous enough that people are like annoyed that he would try to do this.
I think not even if he was more humble, but if he was more afraid. Like if he was just literally like very, very timid and like, I don't want to be in the limelight. I think that mid-90s would be celebrated a lot more. But I think because he's like, yeah, I just wanted to like make this skate film because like I was like a skater back in the day, and I'm just like, I love writing, and then I wrote this thing, and then I was like, what if I directed it? Like I think there's some sort of backlash against just the existence of this project.
Yeah.
And maybe if he shot it in like 16:9 or something, like I just feel that there's some sort of unnecessary distaste for the film from people, but I enjoyed it. It felt very authentic, and I was very happy with the way it turned out.
You got to watch Skate Kitchen though, just to complete the trilogy.
I'm still gonna watch Skate Kitchen.
It's good.
Carson Patrick.
I say some real quick, like, honorable mentions that aren't even on this list are, one is Destroyer with Nicole Kidman. I feel like just missed the cut, but like they promoted this movie as like a very like awardsy type movie, but in reality it's kind of just like the cinematic version of a Tool song. Like if you listen to Sober by Tool, like the guitar riffs and bass riffs in that is the score for this movie. Like that, no joke. It's also like that's how it feels, like a very trashy aughts movie in disguise as an awards movie, which I was, so that delighted me obviously, but I think it was just it was a solid movie. And Sarah and I were kind of, distracted by Nicole Kidman's wig in it, her hairstyle, during the movie. But then we just can't seem to stop talking about it afterwards. So I feel like whatever they did, it was like, it felt so wrong that it was right, Like now it's just like, it's almost just, it's like, well, did she get that? Did she get inspiration from her husband, or we like to think that it's a very like Johnny Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls haircut, which gives it an extra layer of entertainment. But the fact that we're still talking about it, I think is worth mentioning. And just the movie overall, like I'm still kind of thinking about it, just like, yeah, that was a lot better than I was anticipating. And then also, just a real quick shout out to The Spy Who Dumped Me, because overall good, entertaining, lots of laughs, but I'm still so impressed by the fact that they got the tone of that movie right. That movie looks exactly like a Mission Impossible or a Bond or a Bourne movie. It looks like a legit action movie. And then there's the comedy instead of the other way around. And that's kind of where I feel like, it kind of things can fall apart. So the fact that they got it looking like a legit action movie, they did it the right way. And it was awesome. And then another movie that I'm still kind of thinking about, and it earns the award of, I've talked a lot about, you should never shut off a movie. You should never walk out of a movie. And I always give the example of the movie The International with Clive Owen, because, that's a decent movie. But then that Guggenheim shootout comes along and you're like, oh, this is a fucking awesome movie. Like, if you were to check out before then, you would miss this really great scene, and I think elevates the movie even more. So that, I feel like that example has been eclipsed this past year with The Strangers Pray at Night, which, if you were like me, you were probably asking, why do we need a sequel to The Strangers 10 years after the fact? And if you had asked me that question an hour into this 83-minute movie, I would still probably say the same thing. Why do we need a sequel to this movie 10 years after the fact? And that's when the movie takes the biggest 180. I don't think I've ever seen a movie go from a D+ to a B+ so fucking fast. Like, the fact that, and it's probably not an hour in, it was probably like 45, 50, but it's close. It's like very late in the game, because it's pretty much all like kind of boring standard slasher stuff. And then this fucking pool scene happens, the infamous pool scene, which I feel like a lot of people have kind of cited, but that pool scene drops and you're like, oh shit, we're in a whole nother movie. Like, talk about wowing them in the end. This movie fucking did that, man. Like, they pulled out that pool scene, and then they pulled out, which I thought was even better, the final scene, which is of the fiery car chase scene set to an Air Supply song, which I feel like that's where you gotta go in terms of horror and stuff. I feel like I'm always citing that shit. But yeah, like that car chase sequence, even better, man. Even fucking better. And like, that is, we walked out of that movie and we're like, yeah, like the ending really pulled it together. And like, I'm still thinking about those last couple minutes, how fucking fast that it turned. It was insane. Like, I would say watch the movie, but you can't just skip to the end. You can't just YouTube the last two scenes or whatever the fuck. Like, I feel like you gotta stick in with it, and experience kind of that first hour where you're just like, I don't know, like, why? And then experience that shift, that complete just 180. And you're like, oh man, we're in a whole different movie now, man. And also on Netflix that I feel like was a great one was the movie Dude. That is it was written and directed by Olivia Milch, who co-wrote Ocean's 8. And this has Awkwafina, Lucy Hale, Alexandra Shipp. And it's another like coming of age. It's a dark comedy too, for sure. But it's basically about four best friends in high school, 4 girls, and it's a coming of age movie, which is really well done. And I think it fits in a lot with Flower. I think Dude, Flower, Never Going Back, and Ibiza are like the quartet of really great raunchy girl comedies that came out this year. What else? Oh, well, there was McQueen, which I thought was my favorite documentary that I saw last year. Teen Titans Go to the Movies. That was my favorite animated movie of last year, although Into the Spider-Verse was a close second. But Teen Titans, like, it also has some of the best like songs in it, like Trey Parker level great songs that are not only like very satirical, but also just like genuinely good, like very catchy. Like Michael Bolton sings one of them, which is probably the best one in the movie. What else we got here? Oh, I know we got, I got Black Panther on there, and there was something that I know that when you guys talked about it, one thing that I think was sorely not talked about was the score. Ludwig Göransson's score in Black Panther, definitely not only the best score of the year, but the best Marvel score for sure. That was just next level. And really, I kind of half jokingly said that after it was over that Ryan Coogler made a DC movie with Marvel money, but it felt like that. It really did, because, it was his vision. And I feel like other than like Iron Man 3 and the Guardians movies, we don't really see that often. At least it didn't feel like this one felt very much like Ryan Coogler's vision up on the screen, which I think that elevates it. I mean, plus it was just a fucking rad movie. But so anyway, yeah, just Ludwig Göransson's score, that was not shouted out, obviously. So I want to say that. Yeah. Okay. How can I forget? It just came back to me. Going back to Aquaman. I'm bringing it back around, and then I swear I'll be done. Dude, the fucking Black Manta montage in Aquaman where he's building his suit is gotta be one of the most intense, insane, fucking raddest scenes in the whole movie, where it's No Good by Depeche Mode playing over the whole thing, and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe this movie. Best movie ever, maybe. It's up there. It's great. 2018. All right.
So that is probably going to do it for our top 10 episode this week. We have provided you with our top 10s, but we also want to know what the listeners' top 10s are. We are going to create a little form for you to fill out over at thespoilerwarning.com/top 10s. Top 10? Yeah, top 10. Thespoilerwarning.com/top 10. That's TOP 10. If you go there, there will be 10 fields for you to fill in, and you can put in what your top 10s were. And we will randomly select somebody who submits their top 10 list to us to receive a free gift of one of the films on your list. We'll send you a digital code on your platform of choice.
Maybe we'll watch all of them also.
Well, in theory, we will have already seen most of the things that made people's top 10s. But yeah, we'll randomly select somebody and send a download code, whatever, on your platform of choice so that you can have one of the items on your list. We'll contact you and ask you which one you want and figure out how to give that to you. But yeah, so sounds like fun.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Hopefully you enjoy that. Maybe we'll even add a little field that you can enter a film that we have not reviewed this year that you saw that you want to see a review from us, and then maybe we can do a listener requested follow-up review for that randomly selected thing.
As long as we get Escape Room in there still, I'm fine.
But yeah, that is going to bring us to the end of this episode of the Spoiler Warning Podcast. Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can go to twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com, where I imagine I'm going to do a write-up that completely contradicts this list.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at TheSpoilerWarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning or like us at Facebook.com/SpoilerWarning. If you want to subscribe to us, you can do so in Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from the soundtrack to nothing. I don't know why I said that, because I was on autopilot, even though we haven't recorded an episode for 2 months. Music for this episode will come from something. Usually for the end of the year episodes, I use the latest DJ Earworm recap of all the pop songs from that year. That's probably playing underneath If not, it will be the Peacocks.
Nice.
Warning.
Old school.
Warning is the title of the song, which was one of the original themes that we played when we first started the podcast.
Back in 1973.
But yeah, thank you very much for listening.
We're at what, like 3.5? It's been a long time.
Oh, fuck me. Oh, we are at 3 hours and 17 minutes.
Nice.
Oh, Jesus
The
Christ.
fans want to hear it.
I did not realize that at all.
Yeah, Joanna said goodnight to me like an hour ago.
And all that was real time. We're going to leave it in.
No, we're good.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining me. If you made it this far, you are the fucking real heroes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Neil
That's
Armstrong.
for recording. Because they're in 2x, we're in 1x.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, we will be back soon. I think things are going to start hitting the glasses this weekend.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
So do you still have to check out Unbreakable?
I saw Unbreakable.
You need to watch
I
Split.
revisited Unbreakable. I'm watching Split this week.
Okay,
I'll be ready for it.
Okay, so we will have a review of Glass later this week. So take care, and we will see you then.
Yeah, can't
Bye.
wait.
It just won't stop, it go bottom. Boot up, yeah, yeah, yeah. Boot up, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we turning it up.